Yeah, that works.
All right, we are live. We're waiting to see if Paolo shows up. I think he's supposed to be here. He got the message.
Maybe he's in Argentina.
Yeah, maybe he's in Argentina. and work swallowed up Tim this week, so maybe he'll show up later. Maybe he won't.
Right.
So it's just Scott and I for the moment. We were just talking a little comics beforehand here. He's never read The Boys. That's what I just started watching season 2 of The Boys, so I was telling him a bit about the comic.
Gotcha.
And one of my YouTube friends actually said he thinks that the TV show is better than the comic. I don't. I think the comic is better than. To me, the TV show, though well done, like most TV shows, is the low budget version of the comic.
Right.
So I think I like the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I just started watching season 2. I'm going to watch all of it. I think they've done a good job with it, but it's the low budget version of the comic. There's not as much superheroing in. Matter of fact, in the TV show, the boys don't even have superpowers.
In the comic, in the TV show, do they run into some of the same things that the Watchmen had in terms of there are things you can do in the medium of comics that don't translate well into TV?
I think all their superheroics they do in the TV show are pretty good, but they use them sparingly. They can't use them like whimsically like the comic could.
Gotcha.
Like, anytime you wanted to use a superpower in the comic, you just did. Like, sure. I don't know if you've seen the clip of the baby with the laser eyes from the TV show. That was well done.
I haven't. Yeah.
And they've done other things that were well done. There was just something done in episode 1 that was little things though. They do little things with the superpowers mostly. Gotcha. The comic, of course, can do much bigger things.
Sure.
And can introduce many more characters. And is longer. Like, the comic, the comic was 70 issues, I think. So it's hard to compare a TV show that's only on episode 9.
Right.
Well, at least I think there's 16 episodes now, but I only watched up to season 1, which is episode 9. It's hard to compare it to a 70-issue comic.
Sure.
Especially since the comic had a definitive ending.
That's good. I like it when certain things have definitive endings. It works for some series. For other ones, you can leave things nebulous, and it works. It just depends on the story. But I like the stories that have a definite ending.
Yeah, sort of. But it makes the new Boys series really weird. Dear Becky, because it's told mostly in flashback, so it's kind of like. And that's the one you've heard me complain about, that there's 3 different times it goes to, and it doesn't give you a caption. Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many simple things you could do. You could do it with a little caption. You could do it with maybe a different color tint, like a sepia tone, or whatever visually you want to put in there. Yeah.
A caption is the easiest way. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 50. Even if you don't want to put a year on it, you can tell us how many years ago.
Sure.
Just give us a sense of. Just let us know we're not. The guys read the guy. It's not in the same time. I don't know when it became chic to not put captions in to do that, but it did at some point.
Well, just think if you had never seen the movie, if you were to read a comic adaptation of Pulp Fiction, would it confuse the hell out of you knowing that it's skipping around non-linearly and you don't have any context to tell you?
I imagine so.
It would me. It would frustrate the hell out of me. Yeah.
Pulp Fiction, the movie, frustrated a lot of people. Mind the Comics is here. How you doing? Yeah, we're Tim's off at work, and I think Paolo's supposed to show up, but he hasn't yet. He's on that Portuguese time, so maybe he's in bed. Maybe he's not staying up till 2 a.m. This week.
So he's on Greenwich Mean Time, and he's waiting for Greenwich Nice Time, I guess. Terrible.
Oh, the Greenwich Mean jokes are flying.
Probably the only one ever.
At least around here.
Probably better off.
Maybe they make them in England and France. I imagine they make them in England and France because France wanted that to be Paris time.
I imagine if you live near Grenoble or wherever it is that they set up the standard for it, I'm sure you probably do run into a lot of that.
Well, there was a big argument when they were setting up, standard time because mine the comics is from Portugal too. Is because it was France and England basically setting it up, the two biggest European powers at the time.
Right.
And France wanted the zero time not to be in England, but to be in France, to be in Paris. So Paris would have had 00, and everything else was added or subtracted from it. Instead we got Greenwich.
Right. I'd be curious to go back and read the history of that and see what led to it being set up in Greenwich.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything special or.
Paolo, Vice is not connected. Let's add him to the stream, even though he's not connected. I don't know what's going on with him.
There he is.
Hey, here I am.
How are you doing, sir?
I just got home. It's 11 o'clock.
And so I was like, maybe he went to bed. He did not stay up till 2 a.m. this week. How are you doing this week, Paolo?
Too early to go to bed.
We were just discussing Greenwich Mean Time and how it's not Paris time.
Okay, I got cable now.
You're hooked in properly?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Sleepy Reader's here too.
Okay.
I believe there's a 0-hour line crossing in Paris, which is still visible in some places. Ah, okay. Could be. Because like I said, somehow we got into time zones and how England and France were, when they originally started world time, were fighting over where the 0 hour was going to be. And France, of course, wanted it in Paris, and England wanted it in England. I don't know if they wanted it in Greenwich or London, or Greenwich was just some compromise.
Well,
I'm
Greenwich,
not sure.
I think Greenwich is in London.
Oh, it's in London? Okay. So maybe they won out. Because London also kind of expanded in a whole other times. I always picture Scott posing with a guitar at all times, day or night. Yeah, he promises that he's going to get us he's getting a camera, but he still hasn't.
I didn't say when.
Yeah. Last week you said maybe next week.
That's why I said maybe. Got to put that quantifier in there. I probably should have got one earlier today, but like I said, I didn't feel so great, so I came back home.
Scott also tells us he got some comics this week.
I actually did. Yeah.
What did you get? We can go over some.
Okay, I'll get the free comic book day stuff over with first. I got the free comic book day issue of Usagi Yojimbo.
Okay, I haven't gotten that yet. You know why I haven't gotten that yet?
You haven't been to the store yet?
No, I've been to the store. But okay. Roy, who's the store owner, he actually runs the store kind of as a hobby because he's got a full-time job as a guy writing code for one of the big companies, but he telecommutes to that. Mm-hmm. So he gets the comics delivered to his house, which is which is a county north of ours. Mm-hmm. Then he drives down with the comics, that Wednesday morning. Like Tuesday, they're delivered up to his house.
Right.
Then he gets them delivered. Then he, sorts them all, puts them in whatever, brings them in Wednesday morning and puts them all in the boxes and puts them out. Right. For some reason, he didn't bring down the Usagi Free Comic Book Day. Probably because it's making him no money yet. So it's like for some reason, Usagi Free Comic Book Day is still at his house. He hasn't brought it down yet.
He's just teasing you.
Yeah. I think the only two pull list customers who were getting that were Walt Simonson and I.
Oh, so you and Walt shop at the same place?
Yes.
Oh, that's amusing.
And I know that because when I went to get it, because I'm in every week.
Uh-huh.
And the other guy who works there, John, he was like, you know, because he's like, Soggy isn't here, and then he's the one who asked Roy and who told him. But the first thing he did was he was going to pull it out of Walt's box and give it to me because Walt wouldn't be in for a little while. Probably
Gotcha.
he comes in much less often.
Gotcha.
So I was like, oh, which he's done before, like when I got shorted on something.
Walt, Wheezy is writing a webcomic now that I'm interested in. And I don't remember the exact title of it, but the material it's dealing with is Richard the Lionheart's return from the Third Crusade, and he gets captured in Germany, you know, and held for ransom. And so I'm really interested in reading the rest of what she's going to do with that. So there's our Simonson connection for today.
So what else did you get besides Usagi?
Well, the other free comic book day I got is one that's called Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics.
The Tom Scioli one?
Tom Scioli, yes. It's got kind of an anime art style to it.
Right.
I got 2 back issues of American Gods, The Moment of the Storm, art by Craig Russell and Scott Hampton. You can't go wrong with either one of those 2 guys.
Oh, yeah. Are those Neil Gaiman?
Yeah, Neil Gaiman's the writer. And I got Usagi Yojimbo number 12, which is the newest issue.
Okay. Yeah, I got that one too. Last week, I think that.
And then today when I got home, there was a package waiting for me, and I got a book from Bud Plant, which is the Fleetway Picture Library Classics presents Jet Ace Logan, which is a retro science fiction character, probably from the 50s, I'm guessing, from England. So sort of like Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, Dan Dare, but just a different version thereof. So.
Okay.
So that's what I got.
Cool. Sleepy's telling us some stuff. Let's see. Usagi Chibi? I don't know.
Yeah,
they were running some little Usagi Chibi. Is he in the Free Comic Book Day one?
No, that one's not out yet. That one's coming out later.
Okay. I guess it was a teaser for the comic.
The Chibi thing is being done by both Stan and his wife. So.
I don't think I'm quite as cool as Walt Simonson, but sometimes I steal his books. Well, like that happens sometimes at my kind. If like for some reason I get something not in my box, since I'm in every week, they'll pull it out of somebody's box who isn't in every week and reorder a copy for them.
Gotcha.
Because they're not going to be in for a couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah.
All right. And meanwhile, I found Jet Ace Logan was published in Portugal.
Okay.
And I have evidence in issue number 16 of Condor magazine, Falcon number 230, and World of Adventures number 1206. Amazing. All of this in the 60s.
What was published in Portugal, did you say?
Jet Ace Logan, the one that Scott was talking about.
Okay. Interesting.
I think I have, let me see if I still have it here. A British war comic, Portuguese edition.
Okay.
Nice Lancaster bomber there on the front.
Yeah. Black and white art from I think Commando magazine. I don't know who did this. These are usually not signed. And this as typeset lettering. Although I think this is, it doesn't say when it was published, but I think it was fairly recent, maybe early 80s, because Battler Britain was not translated.
Okay, gotcha.
And there in the 50s and 60s, we had to translate the names of foreign heroes because foreigners were not allowed to be heroes. Only we Portuguese were allowed to be heroes.
Interesting.
And what did I get this week? Usagi Yojimbo Color Classics number 7. This is the last one in this series. Now they're going to put it into a trade paperback. they've been doing a really nice job with the color and printing on these.
Who's doing the colors on that?
I just heard that Tom Luth just retired.
Yeah, I think I was
colorist Rhonda Pattison.
Oh yeah, she used to color Atomic Robo.
Okay.
Which she may still color it, I'm not sure, but yeah.
And I think this is the last of the pre-Usagi Yojimbo #1 stuff. This has got a 1985 copyright on it, and they're an 8-page segment, so I think this stuff was in albedo and whatever else.
Gotcha.
So I think though the stories are all continued, they're not all 8-page stories. Like I said, I think we get into the next series will be the Usagi Yojimbo #1 stuff.
Gotcha. I've also learned that if you don't jump on one of the Usagi trades that you want, you may not be able to get it later.
Oh yeah, I assume they don't have large print runs.
I don't know. Some of them larger than others, but some of the Saga hardcovers that Dark Horse did, I have #2 and #3. But now you can't. Yeah, now you can't touch #1 for less than $400.
I imagine the hardcovers especially don't have that big a print run.
Right.
And then we got Red Mother #8. Good day, Gore Vidal. Whoops. Work swallowed Tim up this week, so I don't think he's showing up. Once again, this is my slice of life horror book, I call it, and it's good stuff. She went to her job and there was black goo all on the steps for no reason.
I hate it when that happens.
and this is sort of the Slender Man monster who keeps showing up. Who's like, we think he's the Red Mother minion. And we think this woman, the lead character of it, the Red Mother wants for some reason. And though the lead character doesn't know it, some of her friends, whenever she walks away or whatever, are like, "Hail Red Mother." So it's like they let us in on the fact that some of her friends, there's something weird going on with. And there's our lead character right there, who's just this woman who's a computer. She works on computer puzzles. Like I said, she lost her eye in the first issue when her boyfriend, they were walking by some random crypt in New York or something, some random doorway, and the Red Mother and this guy sucked her boyfriend in and took her eye. Then we keep getting repeating eye motifs like this right here. I think this is I don't know if this is the woman missing the eye or the Red Mother missing the eye, because it's all sort of in this dream world picture. I think that's the Red Mother missing an eye, and it's just kind of like a dream world picture to begin. We don't get into the story until all the red is gone and we're back with the woman and her new boyfriend. So, I've really been enjoying this one.
Good.
Then let's see, Reaver wrapped up. Red Mother is almost repeating itself issue by issue, hitting the same beat of the horror. That it is doing that, but I'm still enjoying it because I like slice of life stuff more than I like horror stuff. So Red Mother hitting the same beat for me is fine, because slice of life stuff is all the same beat. Slice of life stuff is like no beats. That's kind of the way slice of life storytelling works, is that things just happen. And Red Mother is things just happen and then there's horror. So there's not the normal story structure. I can see people buying Red Mother in trade paperback and trying to read 6 issues of it at once and going, just because if you don't like slice of life how many people like slice of life stuff mixed with horror? Not a ton, probably me.
I was going to say probably just you.
Then there's Reaver, like that. There's Becky Cloonan covers, like that figure right there. This is what's weird too is this is part 5 of 5. It ends the story. It's like, well, I wonder why the first story had 6 issues and the second story had 5 issues.
Because it goes to 11.
That could be it. And this, like I said, wrapped up the story. I enjoyed this story. It was like the first story was like a Dirty Dozen Suicide Squad story. And this one was more the characters who survived in a town running into some bad little situations. So different artist on this one, but nice art. The writer is still the same. Who's doing this one? Justin Jordan, Nico Henderson, and Clayton Cowles on the letters. So this will be out in trade if you like that. What does Gore Vidal have to say to us? Fixing up the den, too many bugs out of place. Finding countless new sandwich Uber stack. Yeah, I hate when that happens.
I can empathize with that.
I don't know where my Usagi Yojimbo first issue, my Usagi Yojimbo #1 is. It disappeared. It may just be in with stuff when stuff moved around. Like, I don't know what happened to it. Yeah. Some comics are written just for Jared. Very few, but some.
I'd appreciate having some custom-made comics as well.
It was funny because I would say it's over now, but somewhere around 2012, I put it with the first issue of Saga, sort of an Image renaissance, where all of a sudden Image started putting out a lot of good books. And I started, all of a sudden, there were more books I was interested in than I can even afford for about maybe 4 or 5 years. And I can remember Chris, who was running the comic shop at the time, going, "Oh, comics taste is finally caught up with Jared's." But I think it's over now. It's like, because it used to be like there was a new Image book out every other week that I was interested in for a good long while. And now it's like, I've been trying these books and
It's like one of the things I always ran into is a lot of the creators I would follow did miniseries.
Hold on, Tim's waving his hands at me. Oh, look at that.
Oh my goodness, the prodigal has returned.
Goodness, Tim's here. All of a sudden I saw him waving his hands down there in the little using StreamYard, I have to let him into the stream. So.
I watched your eyes. I picked my spot.
Okay. How you doing, Tim?
What's up, man? I'm glad to see y'all.
Yeah. Glad to see you too. Missed you last week.
Yeah, we had a day that for everybody it felt like 10 days. So yeah, I literally just walked in the door like whenever you saw me, like, and then add 5 minutes. I'm like, good God. God.
Gore Vidal's gonna dock your pay.
You get a demerit already.
We're not on my channel, so it's docked.
Some say there's a Boom renaissance now. Yeah, I've been buying a few Boom books, like Red Mother's a Boom book. There's a couple of I've been liking Boom, Scout, and Vault. I think I've been buying quite a few from those 3 over the last year or so, I have to say. More than I've been buying Image books too, but like I said, in 2012 there was a lot of Image books that started that I liked. Let's see, I just added a new book to my pull list this week. I started with The Ice Cream Man. This is the quarantine edition. I've been reading these on Hoopla. The digital library app, and I've been enjoying most of them. So I said to myself, why not put it on my pull list, because I haven't found other stuff. So I bought this is the quarantine special, which is the main artist. Who's the main artist? What's his name? Martin Morazzo. Is that our guy? Yeah, it's our guy. He does about these are all like 8-page stories. He does like 2 or 3 8-page stories, and then we got some other people who do others. Declan Shavy, Al Ewing, I guess, wrote one. PJ Holden. So they're like about half the book is other people doing Ice Cream Man stories, and half is our normal team. And they released this. They started doing this when Diamond stopped shipping books. So they made these and I think released them as web comics to keep people tied over. And then since they had this sitting on the shelf, this is the second printing of Ice Cream Man issue 20.
Oh, the places you can go.
Yeah,
I think
very
that's
Seussian there.
I'm not sure, but I think somebody told me that particular issue sold out because of the Dr. Seuss cover.
Yeah, this is the second printing of it. I think it was the first. At first, I thought it was just a Dr. Seuss homage cover that sold out. I was confused. Then I saw this, and I was like, "Oh, I'll pick it up." And then, and Sleepy Reader said this is a completely different cover, I think, than the other Dr. Seuss one.
Okay.
And he says, "Yeah, it's reading Ice Cream Man special as you guys talk." And then, as I read it today, it's completely that there's a lot. It's the Ice Cream Man terrorizing children by reading children's books to them.
Interesting.
I love how I love how they use kids to get to make it a horror. You know what I mean? Like
right. Oh, and here's the Dr. Seuss parody, which is how does this go? I just have to read you this part right here. The Gremaloke is instead of whoever the green eggs and ham guy is. Would you smoke weed laced with coke? So the whole time the Gremaloke is trying to get him to smoke weed laced with coke, and it's little kids that are reading it.
Like, does Fat Freddy's cat show up there anywhere?
See, I'm sitting here thinking, how basic. In my day it was embalming fluid.
And Ice Cream Man really is. It's kind of an anthology because there's no ongoing story kind of so far. And the Ice Cream Man is just like this devil character who comes in and in this one, he just comes into this family's house. You find out later on he kills the father and he's making the mother bring them snacks and he's reading terrifying stories to the little children. And that's the whole issue. And each issue is kind of self-contained.
Right.
And they've done a couple of things that annoyed me. Like they made one issue in almost all in Spanish. Why? I don't know. It's like I flipped through that issue and the hoopla. I was like, they're like, you can look up the Spanish and Google Translate. I'm like, really?
I've got a Mr. Burton, or anyway, I got a Tardy book for 19 years. It's in French, so I feel your pain.
Yeah, it's like, but why are you gonna?
No, I have a book published in Portugal, written by a Portuguese author, and half of the dialogue is in German because it's set in World War II Poland.
Authenticity, sir. Authenticity.
So Tim, since we're talking about the Ice Cream Man, that always makes me think of the Van Halen song. Your tardy book and said, do you not feel tardy?
I don't feel tardy. I brought my pencil.
Give me something to draw on, man.
Yeah. And there was another issue that I barely read that they made into a palindrome.
Okay. The entire issue?
You could read it from the front to the back or the back to the front.
Now, see, I'm cool with experimental storytelling if you can pull that off. I mean, off the top of my head, I swear there's another book somewhere that has done that. But
well, there was Exquisite Corpse, which you could read in any order.
Okay,
that wasn't quite a palindrome.
Yeah,
but
that might be it. Yeah,
the Spanish issue was Sleepy Reader's least favorite. How could it not be if you don't know Spanish? Except, of course, Gore Vidal liked it. Yeah. But like the Palindrome one was more an exercise in cartooning than it was a good comic. I mean,
I haven't read the book, but right off the bat, just with this little bit you've told me about it, the guy is innovative, and it sounds like he's doing something different. You get what I'm saying?
Right, he is. That's why I don't mind the issues that are failures.
Yeah.
Because he's doing something different.
I'd rather read a bad comic that's trying to do something different, than just a normal book. You know what I mean?
That's what, like I said, I don't mind the failures as much when I know he's trying, when he tries and succeeds in other issues.
Yeah,
it makes it okay for me.
It kind of reminds me. There was a couple of instances in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen where he'd have some passages that weren't in English. They were in a few different scripts or languages, and if you have to look those up, that's not so bad. But if you had to translate an entire book, that would get tiring.
To me, it's like if you're gonna do something in another language, it's okay with me if as part of the story I'm not supposed to know what they're saying,
right?
Kind of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be that guy. There's two books that you actually had to, and you can do it a little bit with Superman if they do Kryptonian stuff. But now with the internet, you can get on and find the secret language. The Legion of Superheroes have Interlac. You can actually go back to some of the Giffen issues and see what they were saying on the sides of buildings. Not too many jokes there I'm aware of. But then X-Force, when Mike Allred was on it, Duke, was that Green Glob's name?
Yeah.
He had an entire language that I found on the internet like in 2003. Got to go back and look at the books, and I'm like, he's like Kenny from South Park. You know?
See, I don't mind Easter egg stuff like that.
Right, there we go.
That doesn't bother me at all.
Well,
and like I said, it also doesn't bother me. Like sometimes you're watching a show and they have something in another language, and you as the viewer aren't supposed to know that language.
Right.
That's part of the storytelling.
It's part of the storytelling device. Yeah.
Right.
Unless it's on another planet and all the aliens speak English.
Do you remember the movie Caveman?
I own Caveman. 5 words.
It's like the Asian guy was the only one that spoke perfect English.
Yeah. I thought the palindrome gave 2 different meanings to the story, but it did remain just experimental by the end. Yeah, it wasn't like that. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was just an exerccise in cartooning.
Speaking of, and Scott's going to be the one to jump on this as he should be. I do believe I'm going to predict that. But the Easter egg messages in Gru that were hidden throughout the story in each issue. Yeah. I rarely found any, but I was like 12 to 15 and only heard about them in the letter columns.
Yeah, if you didn't hear about them in the letter columns, then they were kind of obscure.
Right. He would hide words. You know, he would hide words, or he'd have them backwards in a panel or something, and it would be like a little message that you had to put together by the end of the book.
I remember way back in the day when I was reading the Micronauts, they had a language that would show up sometimes.
Oh yeah,
and
I remember
they
that. They
actually had a translation of that in one of the columns, but
I remember I translated a thing or two.
That font looked an awful lot like Sanskrit.
I wish I could get into the Micronauts like everybody else has. I've got them, I read them, I try to, and I'm just sort of like, what am I missing?
They're better
than
Atari.
They were a lot better when they were coming out.
They're not a very what?
Yeah, they are.
Not the first 12 issues of Atari Force. I'll give you the last half. You know.
I don't know Hedra by Jesse Longerin.
Me either.
I'm not familiar with that, but Sleepy Reader knows that he liked it. I don't know that one or not.
Is Saga coming back? There's been a lot of buzz about Saga all of a sudden. You know.
Oh, I remember back
in Mucho Saga. I don't know what its Spanish is, but down here, Gore tells us it was written by Agatha Christie.
Here's what we need. I'm gonna call this out, right? I found some dude that does ASMR, and they're the older videos, but he would read. It was The Crow. I got the special edition of Crow, so I wanted to see if there's any other videos on the Crow comic, because when I do them, they suck. And what he does is there was some guy, and his name's like Chicho or something. Somebody's going to know who I'm talking about. I just found him last night. and when I was trying to sleep. And he actually has a few videos where he reads comics, in that real soft voice. So if we have a Spanish edition of the Ice Cream Man, Gore Vidal should do the video where he translates for us. There you go. Yeah.
I remember when I first noticed ASMR videos, and I watched a couple of them, and my first thought was like, we should replace each one of these with Brian Blessed. And have the complete opposite of ASMR.
Hawkman, die!
Hey, I tell you what, as much as I like Gru, I think I may have to give a slight edge to Sergio Aragone's Funny series, where he just did whatever.
You don't think Gru is funny?
No, that's not what I'm getting at. I think
he has the entire run. He has the entire run.
I know.
Yeah,
I have them all.
Yeah, but Sergio did a story, a book for Bongo Comics, and the title of it was just Sergio Aragone's Funnies. And it was him doing, stream of consciousness stuff. He did autobiographical stories that were fantastic. I told him when I saw him in Charlotte, I'd love to see some new issues of this come back, and he's thinking that maybe Dark Horse may be interested in publishing some more sometime. But they're really, really good. The story he told about where he met Marty Feldman and then Marty actually died the next day is hysterical. Yeah.
I need to find Gus if he's got. They're talking Sandman, and that's one of my. You can just fish me in with that one.
Yeah,
they're talking about
Game of You, Sandman.
It's one of the story arcs.
Okay, I don't know that one at all.
Yeah.
It's I'm not going to get into it here, but it's well worth reading. Sandman is actually barely in it, which is part of the charm of it and stuff.
Okay. Sleepy's telling us what Hedra was, a one-shot about 3 weeks ago, silent and visually experimental, but all in a good way. Well, that's good.
One of the silent comics I liked a whole lot. There's two of them. They're actually done by the same guy. It's Ricardo Delgado, who did Age of Reptiles. There's no dialogue because it's all dealing with animals back then. And he also did one that was somewhat reminiscent of an alien story, but not quite. That was called Hieroglyph, where you had a space traveler that was going through discovering different things. And both those are Hieroglyph's like 98% silent, and Age of Reptiles is 100%, but they're both fantastic.
I'm very much interested in Age of Reptiles.
Age of Reptiles is good stuff.
That is a book that I think Scott and my buddy Tim pushed on me. Is that the Steve Bassett?
No, that one's Tyrant, which is also
Tyrant.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Tyrant. The 100-issue series that only got 3 issues out.
Well, he's talking about doing some more.
I know. I remember reading that back in the 90s, and he's talking about he wants to do 100 issues in the life of a T-Rex. And I was just like, he just jinxed himself.
Right.
And he got 3 out, and that was it. I'm not sure of the exact story, but I imagine it was because I think he did it. He started it during the boom, right at the end of the boom time in the 90s, and I think the boom ended, and that was it.
Well, he also got burned out on comics in general at about that time as well.
Is Gus Mind the Comics? Is that who that is?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I've already got that video saved to watch. Okay, so I like being on this end of it. I get to be like, wait, I'm going to check something. I've already watched all his Sandman stuff. This is awesome. Okay, I'm on board.
Everyone in the chat read Hedra, and I didn't even know it existed.
The first I've heard of it. I was going to say, I can remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, where I had a good idea of everything that was out.
Well, you got to dig. You have to dig or be in a circuit to know what the good stuff is out there to buy. Seriously.
You also have to have a budget to actually purchase it, too.
Yeah.
In 1991, Marvel put out 125 comics a month. There's no way anybody had a good grip on everything that was coming out.
I don't even bother watching news anymore.
Marvel, so.
I got a different setup.
Hedra made a big splash. Lots of interviews with the artist online. Okay. That makes it like I don't read that many online interviews and things. I don't get a lot of current comic news. I don't think.
I always love reading print interviews. Like some of the long ones that Comics Journal used to have with some of the artists I like. I always love reading those.
We've discussed this before. I was never big. Sometimes I like interviews. Sometimes I don't. I don't know. I haven't been on an interview kick recently.
Well, I think that's when it was just you and me, Jared, on the show.
Oh, it was just the two of us.
Yeah.
I remember Sleepy Reader commenting, saying something like, "Did working in the industry make you not like interviews?" And I said, "It may have, because when you get used to talking to people in comics, interviews are sort of like secondary after that, even though you don't really interview people."
Right.
But,
yeah, Gore Vidal said that was he might, I don't know if he's joking. He says it's a good idea about the translation, but then he's there you go. And then I was getting ready to say he's Dr. Pay. So
yep, I didn't hear. Latest comic shop news. Here's a question. This is the latest IDW crossover. Back to the Future meets the Transformers.
Why?
I have never bought one of their licensed mashup books. Has anybody here ever bought any of their licensed mashup books?
Years ago. Okay, I want to totally butcher this, but years ago they had some kind of crossover. I swear it had something to do with a plague, and they were dimension hopping. You had all whatever their license was. And I think it was IDW, Ghostbusters, everything that they had. Those lasted in my collection about 4 months after I got around to trying to read them. Okay. Now I've gotten, I don't know, maybe it was Dino. I don't know. I get some of these companies I sort of get confused, but I got the I got the bunch of the Star Trek meets Doctor Who, Planet of the Apes meets Green Lantern, Planet of the Apes meets Tarzan. And, if you like old Gold Key Whitman books that are kind of dull, right up your alley. Right up your alley,
Or if you're a little girl reading Transformers My Little Pony, could be cool.
I never was that. Yeah, I never was a huge fan of crossover universes, but the only one I think that I ever thought maybe interesting was anytime Mars Attacks had something to do with something else.
Hey, let me tell you something. I was there from day one in the 80s when they had G.I. Joe versus Transformers. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden they just threw Spider-Man in. I went, what happened? What happened?
Spider-Man appears in issue number 3. That was before because they didn't know if they were gonna do with the Transformers what they done with the Micronauts or ROM, if they were gonna be in the Marvel universe or not. But then now you have the G.I. Joe, and now you start blowing up cities, and Spider-Man appearing number 3. Forget that.
Oh. We're going to end up having a retro talk. I'm like, why do you need G.I. Joe when you got Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Howling Commandos? I mean, there's your crossover. G.I. Joe meets the Howling Commandos.
Actually, there was a legitimate business meeting. A legitimate business reasons they did a G.I. Joe comic. Because at the time, you couldn't make a Saturday morning cartoon and advertise the toys that were starring in the Saturday morning cartoon. I think it went like this. So they made a comic book. And then they had the Saturday morning cartoon and advertised the comic book with the characters in the comic book. So it was a way of getting around that rule that you couldn't advertise the toys that you were making a cartoon of. That's actually why I remember reading. That's why Marvel did the G.I. Joe comic originally. So it's like it was all the way around the Saturday morning cartoon advertising to kids law.
Gotcha.
I want to jump down here to comment about Sleeper Reader. I enjoyed when S.H.I.E.L.D. tangled with Godzilla. I'm hoping he's talking about the 70s series where Dum Dum Dugan was in charge. That's why I became a Dum Dum Dugan fan. I read that book when it came out in the 70s.
I remember those. Yeah, I sure do.
So did I. I was a little. The content. I don't know what year that came out. I was probably 14 or 15, and the continuity cop.
You could not be that much older than me. You could not be that much older than me. I was like 6 or 7 when it was coming out.
I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe I was younger. What year were you born?
Say it. Say it.
I'm 40. Well, how old am I? Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm 47.
Okay. So I am 7 years older than you. I was. Okay. I just turned 54. So
I swear I thought
what it was is you read a lot of comics when you were a kid that were your stepfather's, and so you had a lot of comics from my era around your house,
right?
And you got to read them.
And
like what year did Godzilla come out? That came out in
it had 78, something like that.
70. It was the late 70s because he had a cartoon show also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I was probably about, if it came out in like 78, 79, that puts me at 12, 13.
Yeah.
I've got a disintegrated copy that I still have. The only one left. There was Shogun Warriors and Godzilla.
Right.
That I have 1 or 2 of my original Shogun Warriors, but there's a Godzilla issue where it was the Avengers fighting them, and it took me years to find the book to replace it because in my mind that was an Avengers book, and it was the Wasp and Yellow Jacket that took down Godzilla.
Yeah, Sleepy Reader used to think you were older because the comics you talk about. Yeah, because you talk about a lot of comics that are from mine and Sleepy Reader's like a couple years older than me, I think. So you talk about a lot of comics that were like because they were around your house.
Okay, so let's figure this out. So Jared's 2 years older than I am, and I'm about 5 years older than Tim. Okay, Paulo, how old are you?
40.
Dear God, you're a baby. He's a baby.
Yeah, but the thing is, because I was reading licensed comics, we were years behind. So I started reading Avengers during the Steve Englehart run, even though they came out over 10 years after the fact.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I hate that you were 2 years old in the greatest year of the 80s. I hate that you missed all those movies and all those.
Which year, Tim?
1982. That's when all the great movies came out. Tron, Tron and E.T. and Dark Crystal.
Tron on video, on rental video.
Blade Runner, Wrath of Khan. Yeah, that was the greatest year for movies. I'm telling you.
I actually saw a graphic earlier today that was Wrath of Madeline Khan that was really funny.
And Marvel is putting out an Aliens omnibus. I don't know if there are any Aliens comics fans.
Here's the thing about that, okay? They're not giving any royalties whatsoever on that to the original creators. And instead of hiring somebody that had something to do with the original series, like Steve Bissett or Mark A. Nelson, which did the covers, they're getting Greg Land to do the cover. And I'm like,
I think there's going to be... It will be a Mark A. Nelson cover.
Oh, okay.
The direct market cover will feature Aliens by Mark A. Nelson. So.
Okay.
And the other, Greg Land will supply the all new main cover.
I will tell you what, the small online circle that I'm involved in with comics online and stuff. It blew up when Mark A. Nelson said that he won't be getting royalties. I mean, they're like,
same thing.
It was F Marvel, this and that. I was like,
him and Steve Bissett were both like, the hell with Marvel, man.
They just keep
Well, he did. Dark Horse already did the same thing with their licensed stuff that they got from Marvel years ago.
Conan.
They're like Conan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
No one got any royalty. Then there's this little article on Vampirella's new villain, Prester John, here, who is this guy right here. I've never read any Vampirella.
Did you say
Vampirella?
Okay. I'm glad she's still kicking. Yeah.
She's still, there's a matter of fact, I this week when I posted the Shang-Chi covers on Dropbox for you, the document I made out of the Shang-Chi covers.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I just saw where Gore Vidal told me not to answer without an attorney, and it took me a minute to remember what we were talking about. And I'm like, "You're damn right. That's right. That's the best advice ever, right there." Yes.
How old are you? Yes. Paolo's an honorary old guy because of publishing time shifts.
Yeah, I'm on the Paris Meridian.
Yeah, but I was just this little description of Vampirella's new villain. He's got like every power in the universe. He's immortal. He's got armor made by God and a sword that was borrowed from like Michael the Archangel.
Well, he's Prester John. Of course he's got ties like that.
Oh, and this is by Willingham will be writing this.
Oh, Bill? Okay.
Yeah.
I still vote on Hulk Hogan winning Royal Rumble against him.
Let me tell you something, brother.
You may have the armor of God and the sword of the Archangel Michael, but I say my prayers and I take my vitamins.
It's like, listen to this power set. Who's ever going to fight him?
The Beyonder.
Though he's lived well over 1,000 years, when not hiding among men, he dons ornate armor made in the forges of heaven. It pairs with his sword, which is actually on loan from the Saint Michael the Archangel, who will reclaim it for the battle of the end times. Along with his armaments in nigh immortality, Prester John possesses great strength and can tap into God's speed, allowing him to practically teleport. Like, what's Vampirella going to do against that?
She's going to go, oh, he's going to be...
That's what I was just thinking. His mind will just go, I forgot what I was thinking about.
He'll stop. I've seen that in real life. That's a real move.
Tit punch.
Yeah. Flash him. He's stunned for a minute, and you take him down. That's your only way to beat him. Yeah.
That reminds me of.
I bet it does. I bet it does.
That's how Tim does it.
At Marvel, at lunchtime, we used to play touch football sometimes. And we didn't have the greatest athletes at Marvel. I'm a good athlete, but we were just playing at lunchtime, and most of them, not the greatest athletes in the world working in the bullpen. And we also had at least one woman who was playing with us, Ariana. And my friend Ed, and it's touch football, you diagram plays in the dirt. And my friend Ed
I know. I can see where this is going.
The woo-woo play, where since Ed was one of the worst players, so he had Ariana. The other team put Ariana to cover him since they didn't need a guy to cover Ed. So he invented the woo-woo play where he would run out and lift up his shirt and go woo-woo, flash her, and yell woo-woo, and then run his pattern.
Did it work?
Yeah, it worked. She was a bit surprised by that one. Caught her flat-footed.
That wasn't going the way I expected, but that's actually kind of funny.
Prester John will always be a Jack Kirby FF character to Sleeper reader. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they brought Prester John into Deadpool. I'm not sure, but when I heard that, as one of the few times I was actually curious. I'm like, that's quite a character to bring back.
Yeah, Rick Remender can advise cartoonists to work for Independence because he can sell books with it. He can go back. He can go back to Marvel. He can go to Independence. He can go back to Marvel, and so it's not so easy for everybody. But I agree with them. It's good to work for the Independence. That's who I buy from. Prester John is a big motif in Portuguese maritime discoveries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was one of the reasons we set out to see. One was to find a quick passage to India to get the spices. Right. The second was to reach the kingdom of the Prester John, who could be an ally against the Ottomans.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't Prester John? Oh, I just know he was. Where did he find? He find the mythical land of something, right?
Yeah. Well, they were hoping to find Prester John in Ethiopia, but they didn't use anything that resembled the title. So,
but wasn't he supposed to have like gone off somewhere and found like I forget which, not Atlantis, something like that?
No, it was supposed to have found a Christian kingdom that was hidden, and we tried looking for it in Africa, and we tried looking for it in Asia, and we didn't find any. Okay.
I vaguely remember that story now. I've heard that. I can't remember because I've got this book called Phantom Islands of the Atlantic is the name of it. and it's all islands from the age of the exploration that they thought were in the Atlantic. And I think one of them has to do with Prester John too, as other things.
I want to read that book. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty good book. Phantom Islands of the Atlantic.
I always like stuff like that.
Yeah. And miserable times at Marvel, Gore Vidal. Can't be worse than the miserable times at DC, but maybe. Since I haven't been paying that much close attention to Marvel.
Meanwhile, is it Brian
back
Paluto?
at the ranch?
Yeah. Is it Brian Paluto that does Lady Death?
Yeah.
Well, I finally put him on Facebook, and I saw a comment. You know what? It might have been Tim Anderson commenting on it, but I heard that his last venture in Kickstarter, Indiegogo, whatever he's doing, was standing at $328,000. Like
I said,
Wednesday.
If you're, I once heard this was in the 90s during when the bubble burst. And I think there was referring to Terry Moore and guys like him, where he said the most stable area of comics is that sort of indie comics creator who does everything and has 10,000 fans.
It's the Kai, Moore.
And I think that's still, and I think those guys can really take advantage of Kickstarter and Indiegogo if they can, because like I said, that's all of a sudden Brian Pulido's. And there's not more than 10,000 guys buying his stuff, but it adds up.
See, I remember being like 18, 19, and we'll say 20. We'll say 20, 21. But I just started hearing that these names like Arid and Moore, you know what I mean? And it blows my mind how long they've survived for 30 years without any big controversies over the last 10 years. You follow what I'm saying? Like no shock value news, none of this dumb marketing, their work. You know what I mean? So
the stable guys with 10,000 fans have been stable for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, and it's kind of like a good band that you hear on the radio since you're a kid. You just get used to them being there. It's not exactly taking it for granted. It's just they're always there, and then one day they're gone. And we're getting. As we get older, how much more do they have in them? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when you hear, certain guys are retiring or certain guys are going away, it's like, and and especially mainstream guys just get pushed out after a while. Yeah. Once your page rate gets up too high, Marvel and DC just go, we can get someone younger and cheaper, especially in the last 10 or 15 years.
I tell you what, when you see somebody, like if you see a cartoon picture of somebody in comics like Marvel used to do in their books when they did a profile, or you see them in a comics interview, a little picture from like 1986 or in the 90s, and then all of a sudden you go to a Heroes Con in 2010 and you see them and you're just sort of like, oh, wow. You kind of think about mortality a little bit. Right.
That's it. I thought it was real unusual. Diana Rigg just died this week. I was a fan of her in the Avengers.
That up. Yeah.
But, since she was acting up until she died, it's like usually when you see like an actor or an actress dies, you see a picture of them from their young they show.
Sure.
She had pictures of her from when she was young to when she was old and all the way in between. Because her most famous stuff was Game of Thrones and Avengers. So it's kind of like, you've got old Diana Rigg and young Diana Rigg. You don't always get that.
Well, it was because of her I finally checked out Game of Thrones. So you talked about having a fan following that's followed you for some of them decades. Yeah. And I've got the Avengers, the Emma Peel years and stuff. But one of the first time I actually heard her name, I saw the reruns of the Avengers when I was a kid, and I got mad because it wasn't Captain America and Thor. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what is this?
Right.
But
it was a Black Widow and Jarvis.
Right. But then it's like when the Hellfire Club started getting big with the Dark Phoenix saga, somewhere along the line, you found out that Brimstone, or whatever that episode's name was, influenced all that was Diana Rigg. They turned Jean Grey into Diana Rigg. Right. Just like they tried to do that with Wonder Woman by taking her powers away. They tried to turn her into Emma Peel,
And Miss Peel was like one of the first female characters you saw on TV that was really, a kick-ass character.
Yeah, she had style.
Yeah.
It wasn't, hey, look, I'm a woman doing this. It was like, haha, all charm and an actual character.
I really didn't get to watch the Avengers until the early 90s when it ran on A&E.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's like I read more about the Avengers before then than because I remember I may have seen I saw some, because it didn't run regularly ran regularly on PBS in the 70s when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I never saw it then. I saw a little of it in the 80s, but just a little, and then I got into it just by there was books and magazines about it in the 80s, and that's where I really discovered it.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the oddest things you can ever see when you're 12 years old is the stepdad looked like Monkey Rich, the Dreadnought from G.I. Joe. A biker without a bike is what he looked like. And he was watching it on something. It may have been PBS. And I thought Steve looked kind of silly, that bowler cap and umbrella.
Right.
To see a guy sit there and turn around and look at you twisting his mustache going, he'll fuck you. He'll mess you up with that umbrella and bowler cap. And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about? It was so bizarre telling me a guy was going to kill me with an umbrella and a bowler cap,
Yeah. So it's like I was a fan of the Avengers before I got to see much of the TV show.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in that regard, there are some different shows that I actually read and know more about than I've actually seen on TV.
Prisoner?
Blake 7 would be a good example of that.
I think The Prisoner is something like what Jared's talking about with the Avengers with me. I heard all about it before I finally got to watch it. But I will say the 90s Avengers movie, I'm one of the few people that's all right with it, but it's probably because I wasn't a fan from way back.
Boy, it's okay.
It's ASMR, and Uma Thurman actually could fill out a leather outfit.
Has anybody read any of this Batman, multiverse, dark universe stuff at all?
How many Batman do we need? I want new characters. How many versions of Batman do we need? We're sorry. No, I haven't read it.
I haven't either. I was just curious. I actually was just writing a blog on that and why we have so many. I finally figured out why the math works in the short run and how the math has worked against Marvel and DC in the long run. And what their problem is, because this is how the math works to me. First of all, when you're creating a new character, it's like we always hear the discussion. There haven't been that many big characters created since what, Deadpool? Was he the last one who's kind of a big character?
Yeah,
he was I think he was the last accident like Lobo and Wolverine and Punisher that got big.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's an accident or on purpose. Yeah. I'm talking the last sort of popular character created by Marvel and DC. Before him, it was like what? The Punisher and Wolverine in the 70s. I mean, it's been so long since Marvel and DC created, hit A-level characters.
I was thinking Harley Quinn, but she's been around a long time.
And I'm still not positive if she's hot A-level, but she's got 2 movies, so
right.
So maybe.
Yeah, she has a lot of merchandising as well.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of merchandising, you made it, even if your comic's not selling that well.
That means she created back in the early 90s, mid-90s, somewhere in there. Yeah.
So it's been a while for her, even too. But I think the way the math works is, and I'm going to reference that Steve Jobs video again when he talks about marketing and sales running a company, which is what happened. Marketing and sales runs Marvel and DC. And marketing and sales is actually an easy job in that they cherry pick what's popular. It's like if you got to make a backpack, you put Batman on the backpack. It's not hard. You don't put, Silencer on the backpack. You put Batman on there. Okay. In the 70s, it seemed like they came up with new characters all the time, right?
See, in the 80s, it seems like they came up with all kinds of villains. That's the way I'm now.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Well, the way it works is, like I said, since marketing and sales are in charge, They like all the like the guy at DC they just put in charge was a marketer from esports. These are the guys who are in the decision-making process, and everybody who makes the comics knows it. So what happens is the easiest marketing decision is if Spider-Man is your bestseller, the first thing you do is you make 2 Spider-Man books. Like Marvel back, and I think this happens in all mature companies too. It's kind of as like if you look at Marvel in the 60s, everybody only had 1 book. Once we got into the 70s, all of a sudden Spider-Man had Marvel Team Up, Peter Parker, because the first thing you do is, and it's like a creative person usually doesn't think of this. Oh, we need a new book. Well, let's make some new characters. It's the marketer who goes, let's make a second Spider-Man book.
Right.
And of course it's popular, but the second Spider-Man book, Peter Parker and Marvel Team Up have never been as popular as Amazing. I mean, Amazing Spider-Man is the Spider-Man book. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the next thing you do is the marketer goes, well, we need a female Spider-Man. So they make a female Spider-Man. And eventually, where we are today, where everybody has families. There's 9 Wolverines, there's 9 Spider-Man. But the problem is...
you dilute the product.
Yep.
You dilute the product. That is the problem. But that's not a problem to the marketers. You dilute the product, you get people more disinterested. But the problem, too, is that these secondary characters are never as popular as the primary one. Never. Miles Morales is a nice Spider-Man, but he's never going to be Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Nobody calls him Spider-Man. They always refer to him as Miles Morales.
Yep.
Right, just so you can distinguish him from the other Spider-Man. And the only reason he's popular is because he's Spider. If they made him Miles Morales Mothman, nobody would care.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing with Miles Morales is that he was the last character to kind of go back to what you were saying, the big character, where I saw a younger generation had that spark. Like, I thought they were calling him Miles because they knew him like we knew Peter. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's never going to be as popular, like you said, because the reader base is still so small. That small bump that came in with Miles, that's it. It's not growing. He's not getting big.
The knockoff is just never as popular as the original thing. That's just the way things go.
It's also I've always found it interesting that an anthology book you would think that had different stories would sell to cross over with different readerships, but they never do. They never sell very well.
Miles is the best example of something that's almost as popular. But it's still not as popular as the Spider. He was the star of 1 movie. Peter Parker's been the star of a dozen now. I mean, he is your best hope, Miles Morales. He has probably come the closest to being kind of popular, almost, but he's still not as popular as Peter Parker, Spider-Man. But he's popular. But what it is, and also, in order to let's say you want to create the next Wolverine, how many characters do you think you have to create in order to get the next Wolverine?
100.
200. It's an inexact thing because we really don't know, because we don't know what makes a popular character in the end. We just don't know how you make the next Spider-Man. We don't.
There's too many
things.
Don't
know how you make the West Wolverine.
There's too many things that have to come together for that to actually happen when you really think about it. Timing, costume, letting the character just be what it is because everybody else can fill in what they want in it. That's what I think happened to Wolverine. He had so much mystery about him. A lot of people were able to fill in the gaps themselves. Anyway.
But we do know that numbers matter. Like, you would have to numbers. The more characters you create, the more you have a chance of making the next Wolverine. Now, the problem comes in when you make knockoff characters, because knockoff characters, as we've already discussed, has almost zero chance of being the next Wolverine because they're knockoff characters. They're not as popular as the originals.
When you read Astro City, I thought about this. When you read Astro City, you may be reading The Samaritan, but we know we're reading Superman. And that's the problem with knockoff characters. You can have great stories, but in your mind, you're reading that original character. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. And here's let me see what Sleepy's saying here. When he's saying they're trying to spin out new iterations of old heroes since they can't get traction with new characters. Now, the problem with them not getting, I understand that too. And like I said, and the new iterations aren't even necessarily knockoffs because they get rid of the old one, but you also get rid of some of the old fans. And if you don't get more new, those are just
it's a catch-22. Yeah.
You're talking about stuff I have been talking about since they took the Avengers and the X-Men and made the Uncanny Avengers. That's when I saw it. You got to create new stuff. It's like I swear, ever since they settled the Joe Shuster, Jerry Siegel lawsuits, it's almost like they're getting away from and doing derivatives to get away from royalties or something. Is what it feels like.
Here's where the math works, but I'm just talking pure math here.
Okay.
Where the math works for them, and the math works against them. The math, like I said, it would take, I don't know, you have to create 100 characters, let's say, to maybe get the next Wolverine. So, but the problem is those characters can't be knockoff characters. The knockoff characters give you 0% chance of creating the next Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just want to sell comics tomorrow, the easiest thing to do, the easiest way to get popularity is to latch on to something that's already popular, which is what knockoff characters are. So if you want to sell comics tomorrow, you make a Batman knockoff.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be as popular as it's not going to be as popular as Batman. But let's say a Batman knockoff can get 50% as popular as Batman. Let's just say that for just to pick a number out of thin air. Now the problem is when you create a not knockoff character, he's probably going to get nowhere near that 50%.
Sure.
At best, you can expect that original character to get maybe 20 or 30% as popular as Batman. But if you create 100 of those characters, maybe you'll get one as popular as Batman, and then you ride that all the way to the bank. So, but since that knockoff character can get you to 50%, and the original character can't, they just keep making knockoff characters because that gets you the money next month. But if you keep making knockoff characters, you dilute your brand, people get less interested, and your sales numbers go down. But you're still better off in the short term than creating new characters. But in the long term, you're better off creating new characters because one of them will hit and be better. So it's like this weird catch-22, especially, once again, it takes leadership to get you out of it. It takes a leader who knows this and says, we have to create new characters. That's what we have to do. But that type of Steve Jobs like I said, Steve Jobs' leadership was his ability to say no.
I tell you what, I mean, going with what you're saying, one of the best things I've ever seen in comics, in my opinion, on introducing their new characters was Valiant. Valiant would have a book around the third or fourth issue. They'd have a character pop up. That's your first appearance. Then he'd get a book. That's where how they build up all their characters, from Shadow Man to Ninjak, all that stuff, right? And Valiant was, the shooter years were great. So, I think it's possible if you have people knowing what they're doing and understand a fandom. A lot of what you're talking about put me in the mind of Wizard of Oz that covers everything. You're different. Behind the curtain, you've worked in the business.
Yeah.
And then you have us guys who are just seeing Oz, what's in front of us, give us characters. Here's how we see comics and the story, the art, characters, pretty basic stuff on our side of it. But then even the Wizard of Oz had the knockoff characters. You take Wizard of Oz, look at Return to Oz, Tin Man, TikTok, Scarecrow, Pumpkinhead, whatever they were. It sounds like it's always been a thing,
Yeah.
Most people don't realize how extensive the Oz universe actually was.
Yeah.
And just like Sleepy Raider says, it adds to their portfolio of characters to play with in ancillary markets like movies.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Sales and marketing is running things.
Yeah.
That's they're the ones. Like I said, there's this great Steve Jobs video. I wish I could play it here, where he talks about how in the beginning, product people run a company. And the product people would be the creators.
Yeah.
And they make a great product, which would be, Stan and Steve Ditko making Spider-Man, Stan and Jack making the Fantastic Four. That's your great product. But after a while, when you get into a monopoly position, and he's talking about companies like Xerox, but a monopoly position would also be comics where you've created Spider-Man, and Marvel has a monopoly on Spider-Man comics. They're the only one who can publish Spider-Man comics. So now once you have the best, once you make Spider-Man the best-selling comic, the creators can't, as he says, what happens when Xerox makes a better copier? It doesn't matter. They've already got monopoly position. What happens when Marvel makes a better Spider-Man comic? It doesn't matter. They've already got the only Spider-Man comic. So then the only ones who can move the needle are the sales and marketing guys, the guys who say, let's make 2 Spider-Man comics. And then all of a sudden you've doubled your Spider-Man sales. It's that guy who gets promoted. And it's those guys. And then the guy who says, let's sell Spider-Man backpacks. I bet we can get a lot of money for that. And that guy gets promoted. So now all those guys are in the upper echelon making the decision making. And the creative guys are out of the decision making. They don't have it. They're just living in the sales world. So that's why all these characters get created for ancillary markets.
Yeah, and the only way I can really come back with that is how they're screwing up is we had to talk about Alan Moore. They could have had 50 different stories from him over years and keep making money, but they wanted Watchmen. They're thinking about the now.
Right.
The problem with making these derivative characters and the knockoffs and all this stuff is that you don't have a place for your talent who makes the comics to really shape themselves on a book. Think about Daredevil. I mean, I can get to the point. Think about Daredevil. Before before Miller got on there, he was more or less a Spider-Man knockoff, more or less. He was a CD character. That's what people forget.
Right.
Miller comes on there, and here's a guy who's creative, experimenting, learning his craft. He's been around Eisner and all these masters, picking up their techniques and stuff. And boom, the guy's a superstar. That leads to Dark Knight Returns. That leads to all this big stuff. There's nowhere to, I'm trying to think what the word is. There's nowhere to let your talent learn their craft. You know what I mean? Farm their talent and take these new other characters and make the new franchise. Daredevil was huge for a while, and it still is living off of that boom in the early 80s that Miller did, and then people go there and they get their name, they get added, they get that little rub like Bendis did and stuff, and I think you get what I'm saying, without getting all wordy, but that's one of the things I don't get. Yeah, you have the marketing and behind the scenes stuff, but even the music industry would keep people on a record label for years so they can build up their audience on tour in the 70s and stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know where they lost that. Maybe it's the now, or maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know where they lost a lot of that. Why they don't get it
here. DC has been better at introducing. Like I remember they introduced about 5 years ago. DC introduced a bunch of new characters, and
I disagree completely with Eli with what Eli is saying here, because if we're talking about Jonathan Kent, it's still just a Superboy. Damian Wayne is still just a Robin. Jessica Cruz is still Green Lantern. They are still new takes on old characters.
But they actually did introduce some new ones, like with the Terrifics, with the Silencer, and a few other things.
The Terrifics are using Mr. Terrific, Plastic Man, Metamorpho, and the new take on Phantom Girl from the Legion of Superheroes.
It was a knockoff of the Fantastic Four.
I think that they're doing it more because Silencer was the only one of those books I read, and it was the only one that was a new character. So, but you got to do that all the time. Keep recycling new. You got to create new characters, have them fail. Create new characters, have them fail, and constantly cycle through new. If you want the next Batman, it's basically up to the newer publishers to create new. They have been.
Right.
But it's kind of hard when most of them are using licensed properties. Many of them created even in the 1930s.
Like I said, I think DC has tried to create new characters more than Marvel, but I don't think they've been successful at it so far. But if you ever want to read, Silencer is the new fact would have to come out from the media to a younger audience than you have to create them, though. If you never create them, they'll never exist. But it was like, we can understand, like the knockoff characters, short term, give you more of a boost, but long term, they don't. So it's like, but it seems all they create is the knockoff ones. So it's like,
see, I think I had the first 2 issues of Silencer, and I was like, it's Martha Washington. I mean, say,
but I think that's the math of creating new characters. It's that the knockoffs will get you more money now, but will never get you the next Batman. But the characters that aren't knockoffs will get you the next Batman sometime in the future, but you have to cycle through a lot of failures now, and nobody wants to cycle through failures. Yeah.
Now they try to do what Miller did with Daredevil over and over until the ground, that kind of retcon into the ground, it seems to me. Yeah, they're trying to recreate what,
I was never a fan of retcon storytelling. I was never a fan of that whole everything is wrong, or that. Yeah. I always like my storytelling to move forward, but not a lot of people don't. A lot of people
and besides, it's lazy. I can't think of anything lazier than coming up to an editor and saying, character X, well, let's do the complete opposite. Is that creative?
No,
that's one of the things that always bugged me about the J.J. Abrams Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
It seems to me like if you're a decent writer, part of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Part of the talent that you would use, and also to some extent playing in that universe, going by its own limitations and what's been set up in continuity. Why wouldn't you just create a new character instead? I mean, if you're going to play any universe that's already established, go by, at least try to follow what's been going on instead of just coming out of left field with something completely crazy.
Writers don't like to do that.
Well, then they need to come up with their own characters.
I think I can think of very few times. I can think of very few times a retcon work that it was actually original, and I always go back to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. He didn't destroy what happened before; it just sort of turned it on its side and made you look at it a different way. But then you get something like Star Trek and like what they're doing with the Legion and stuff. I'm convinced a retcon is just because the freaking writer doesn't know anything about the characters and the history and stuff. That's what it feels like now. It's like,
hey, I don't think Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was really a retcon. When I talk about when I don't like retcon stuff, it's like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing just lets you know that this is a different Swamp Thing. This isn't the Swamp Thing from before, kind of thing.
He's not the human. He's always been a plant. So they changed the concept.
The kind of retcon I don't like in general, some people have done it well, is where you go
anything done with Hawkman.
When you're on issue like 400 of Spider-Man, and you go, back in issue 216 of Spider-Man, when he walked out the door for a moment, this all happened. And then he walked back in the door, and everything is changed now.
And then you get stuff like the Spider-Clone saga.
Yeah. That sort of stuff I'm not I like the story to move. It's like when they take something from the past, it's the IQ or whatever, everything is wrong kind of retcon I'm not a fan of, where they take some event in the past and say, oh, that event in the past, all this stuff, you didn't know.
Stacy had kids with the Green Goblin.
Yeah. What was that?
Gwen Stacy had kids with the Green Goblin.
All this stuff in the past.
I know what you're talking about.
Right.
It's like, oh, come on.
There's no need to rehash the past with a lot of these books. I think we're saying the same thing. I just realized. Go forward. If you're going to acknowledge the past, pull a story out of it. Don't, Yeah.
We've also got the general assumption that creators now save their best ideas for. Yeah, there's that too. Why are you going to give your lottery ticket away?
Right now, the industry is not set up to have a successful, commercially successful creator-owned books.
No.
Well, a lot of it's got to do with TV deals and movie deals and stuff. Going back to The Crow and The Walking Dead, a lot of people started seeing this, and they made the decision to keep their stuff.
I'll put it back at the Turtles. Those guys really hit the lottery.
There you go. Yeah. Cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon. Yeah. And then the movie came out in 1990. So yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. That retcon. I think that change it.
You know what? Daredevil had a little bit of a retcon. I don't know if it was a retcon or not. We just didn't know how Daredevil got trained when they brought in Stick and Elektra in his past.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that, but also stuff like how many Batman stories have we read where some long lost love of Batman shows up again, and you're like, oh, this was the woman, his long lost love, who he was. Well, I'm like, oh, come on, how many
let's go big. How many people? Yeah, let's go big. How many people have retconned Superman's origin going to it? How many different? You know what I mean? I mean, those Superman Birthright was the first Mark Waid work I couldn't stand. You know, I'm like, why? This makes no sense. I've already heard these stories. Everybody, it's like the movies always wanting to tell Batman's origin again. You know what I mean? It's always just a little different. They're just rehashing stuff. They're just rehashing the same thing we all know.
Right. Yeah. Last week on the Discord book club, we read All Star Superman, and that has the best use of Superman's origin that you'll see in a comic.
Minimalism.
One page.
That's all you need. That's okay. I always say there was a reason that Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko did origins in 8 pages and then moved on with the story, because all origin stories are the same. You weren't this thing, something happened, now you are this thing.
Yeah.
The story's about when you are this thing. So keep going.
And Hollywood seems to think that that's the end of the story. They can't get past the idea that the transformation into a hero is more important than working as a hero.
Right. But also, like I said, my friend Rob is one of these people. He likes stories that give him more detail about some story he liked. And those are the people who like retcons and like expanded origins, and I hate them.
Well, you can add on to a story without completely ruining it.
You can. Yeah, but that's tricky.
Well, you have to have a good author,
right? But in general, we don't have good authors.
That's true.
And in general, talent averages out.
Some of it's more average than others, too.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I don't know. I saw a picture of Nightwing's costume he's running around with now, so I'm pretty much done. For real.
Easy E tells us, John. The part I laugh at in the John Byrne Man of Steel every time it's mentioned is that there was a blizzard in Kansas that kept them from getting in town for 4 months.
I might have been longer than that. I think it was longer than that, to tell you the truth, and it was because of the Manhunters. They retconned the retcon in Millennium and said it was the Manhunters that caused that.
But I was like, really? A 4-month blizzard? And that's how they explained how everyone thought that the baby was the Kents, because they just didn't go in town for 4 months because of the blizzard.
Now, I'm going to be with who said that. I'll be with the Game Hunter there. Like that John Byrne origin story, I'll defend the Man of Steel stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's really
I know you like it. Just that part.
But what you got to understand is when Byrne did a retcon until Spider-Man Year One, it was pretty successful. There's that he just went back. There's even a joke in some What the book, or maybe Keith Giffen did it. If Byrne gets on a book, he just takes them back to the 30s and 40s. He just pulls from different stuff.
I have a less problem with that kind. Let's call that a relaunch now for now.
Yeah.
I have less problem with like a Man of Steel sort of relaunch where they say we're just going to start over at the beginning. I have less problem with that than with a retcon where all of a sudden they said, remember back in issue 163? Well, all this stuff happened that you didn't see.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
An editor needs to say no.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I'm going to have to go back and look and make sure I'm remembering this right in my Who's Who. But I remember getting mad that when Who's Who came out with the Superman, we got the Golden Age Superman of Earth 2, and then we got Byrne Superman. And I'm like, where's the dude from the Silver Age? I'm like, what? They just flipped him to the side. That's what I got mad about. I'm like, I'm fine with all this new Superman stuff, but where's that guy? You know,
the Manhunters were everywhere in the 80s.
Yeah, no man escapes the Manhunters. The Manhunter storyline wasn't bad, but I think it did drag on for a while.
Yeah. I noticed that many younger readers don't care about a character history beyond maybe the 90s or late 80s, and even then, the retcons don't bother them as they do the older.
Yeah, I imagine they wouldn't. I mean, if you're a new reader,
that's just human nature.
Yeah. Well, that's human nature. I think that's right.
Well, if there's
when everything's new to you, what does it matter?
Yeah. If there's anything about YouTube that kind of made me aware of an audience out here, is that you got to remember, a lot of people don't really know what an actual healthy comic book industry is, or what a golden age where all the books are great on the spin rack, because they weren't born then. And some of them listen to our stories, they don't know. I always kind of compare it to a desert. If you're out in the desert and you're crawling on the sand and you're thirsty, somebody can hand you a glass of sand and tell you it's water, and you think it's water. It tricks your head. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They didn't see it, so there's a thing when you're a kid, you want your own thing. It's new. You want to talk to your friends about it. So that's why this stuff is cool to them. They don't know what a healthy comic book industry is, or one full of creativity. They've never seen it.
I don't think it necessarily even has to do with healthy too. I think it has to do with a person's taste has context.
Yes.
Yep.
And what I mean by context is like, it's not relative. I don't mean it's relative. I mean has context in terms of
your cultural outlook influences the way you see the characters.
And also it has context in what you've read. If you're young and you start reading Batman and you get into Batman and you like Batman, and you say, "Oh, I really like this. I really like these new issues of Batman. They're great." What an older reader might say is, "Oh, you might know where those stories were based on." If you say, if you like that issue of Batman, read Frank Miller's Batman Year One.
Right.
Frank Miller and Shelley.
I can't believe I'm going to reference South Park in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And if they go back, it's not even homework. It's just context.
Right.
Because if they go back and read Batman, sometimes you like the stuff that was influenced by other stuff. Yeah. And if you go back and listen to this other stuff, you're like, "Ooh, I really like this other stuff." And it changes your context of the stuff you originally liked that was influenced by this stuff. You'll still like it, but it's got a different context. You can now see where it came from. Sure. You can now see that the original stuff might actually be better. It might change. Like this stuff right here that you just read might be a 10 for you in your Batman reading. But then you read something else, all of a sudden you've got a new 10, and this 10 shifts to a 9. And the more you read, the more context you have, the more your judgment shifts stuff around that you've already read.
When I read Will Eisner's Spirit in the late 90s, finally, it kind of took the umph out of Sin City. I'll go ahead and tell you that. What you want to say, Scott?
That's what context is.
Right.
What was that, Scott?
Well, I was just going to say, sometimes also what will happen, if you suggest something like that to somebody, then they tend to get mad at you and call you a gatekeeper. You know?
I was getting ready to say something kind of like that. The South Park episode where they had Guitar Hero. They're sitting there playing Guitar Hero where they just got to push 5 or 6 buttons on their game, right? The dad goes into the closet, pulls out his guitar, and he's trying to show them he knows how to really play those. And they just look at him and they're like, "What's he doing? We're trying to play our game." That's exactly what
I can identify with that one.
That's what I'm getting at. That's the perfect example of what I've learned doing this stuff on YouTube over the years and dealing with or meeting people different ages. I've met a couple people who love these stories, and they were like in 6th grade when they started watching this stuff on YouTube. And
but then there are some people, and I would include both readers and viewers of TV and movies as well, that don't really get into going back and discovering the back catalog or the influences that influence the things they're interested in. They're more passive in that regard.
Yeah. you can't tell people what they like is if someone's new to reading Batman and really likes the new Batman stories, you just encourage them. You go, yeah, I'm glad you know. And if you want to read my favorite Batman story, it does you no good to say, "Oh, that stuff's crap. You should have read the stuff before you were around."
I've actually had people try to dismiss me by saying, "You sound like some guy that's got a whole bunch of comic book boxes and read a whole bunch of comics." And I'm just sitting here like, "Well, yeah, I don't get what I'm saying here." Why is that bad?
When I was 8 or 9, if you told me that you had a bunch of comic book boxes, I would be jealous of you. I wouldn't dismiss you.
Where are they? Let me see them.
And Sleepy Reader here said retcons work if they don't do it too often. Yeah, at some point they started to lean into them. Yeah, I think a lot of it is the writers' egos. They want to leave their mark on some famous character.
Yeah, but they go in there trying to leave their mark, and we tell them, "Nah, we don't care about your mark."
Yeah, but it's okay that in their mind they left their mark. They do that.
You sir nor Zorro, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, there's another comment up there. Wait a minute. I think creators realize that it gives the creative license to do whatever they want because the readership won't push back.
I disagree.
The readership. When you're creating a comic, the readership does not matter to you. I mean, you want your comic to sell, of course, but you don't. Most people don't think of the readership when they're making a Batman story. They think, "Oh, I want to make a cool Batman story. Hope everyone's going to like this." Or that's
not the problem. I think ultimately this is a self-correcting problem. You go in there and you think you're doing the greatest genius. Your great genius is creating the best Batman story ever, and then your Batman comic sells 15,000 copies. That's fixable. You're fired, and everybody forgets that you did it.
Right. Your readership is all your main reader is also your editor too.
If we go up here to the Game Hunters comment, it says, "Remember when Spidey chapter 1, when they had a bunch of people died in an explosion and then he got bit by the spider? That was a horrible recon." And the next one says they tried to tie in Spidey and Doc Ock's origin and it didn't work. I remember John Byrne thinking he was so clever because he said there were so many explosions in the 60s. I fixed it to where there's less. And he was being serious. That's the retcons. I think this is the perfect example of the retcons we don't like. They don't serve the story. It's just somebody thinking they're clever.
How many people have been bit by that radioactive spider now? I think we're up to 3. I was just looking at something else in Spider-Man where someone else got bit by the radioactive. I think like Spider-Gwen or one of those characters also got bit by the same radioactive spider.
There's a character named Silk that supposedly got bit around the same time, and she's been around the whole time. We're going back just a few years at Marvel, and we see how popular this idea was. It was stuff like that was taking me out of the Marvel before all the other stuff we've talked about. You know,
when Bendis created Jessica Jones and said Jessica Jones went to school with Peter Parker.
Yeah, she just knew everybody. She's Forrest Gump of the Marvel Universe, meeting all the presidents. You know,
and it was one of those free Marvel's comic book day issues, I think, and one of those yet a third person was bit by the same radioactive spider that bit Peter Parker. I was just like, are these people nuts?
And they also handled it like Peter took something from her, like it was supposed to be her gift. And I don't know, we're going way back, but it was very bad the way they handled it.
You'd think after that they would just retcon that spider in one of those old Marvel monster books where this spider's going around biting everybody.
I want to see that. I want to now see that spider become a character.
That's what I was getting ready to say. That.
He crawled off, and he's now a character.
Oh my God! And then J. Michael Straczynski tried to retcon it where it wasn't so much the radiation, but it was an avatar of the spider, and that's why all of Spidey's villains were avatars of other animals. It's some spiritual thing. And he met Grandpa Spider-Man. There was another Spider-Man out there who had the same powers. You know,
so the Shocker was an electric eel. Is that
crazy?
Oh God! You know what's going to happen all weekend? I'm going to be having all these bad retcons take over my brain. I'll be in the fetal position at the table. Like, oh God, they're all coming back.
Do you know what story I always wanted to see? You just reminded me of that with that Ezekiel story from Spider-Man. That who wrote that one? Straczynski wrote.
Oh.
And And that first story, they did I've seen this in other stories too, where it's the hero fights alone story. It's like Ezekiel's just so much more powerful than him. And Spider-Man's looking for help, but like the Fantastic Four are in space. The Avengers are off in the Savage Land.
Look at the presentation. The presentation is fantastic. This is going.
So, and you've seen this story before where the hero fights alone. And it's like, I want to see a story where the Thing is home. Where it's like Ezekiel's chasing Spider-Man. He's like, oh no, and the Thing is home, and he just grabs Ezekiel and smashes him into the ground. It's like, what is that what you needed? No one's ever home when the
I
hero
like that idea.
I want to see the Thing be home and just crush the guy.
All right. I want to throw it out there. I want to tell you the story I've always wanted to see. And I think it's since I was like 12. I reserve the right to correct that later. But I put it together one day. It was pretty obvious. I wanted to see like this crossover. I didn't want a crossover. I just wanted them to take Matt Murdock and put him in a DC setting and have him be the Green Lantern that's blind because he's the man without fear. You had to have no fear to have that ring. Right. And it made perfect sense to me. And I'm like, and he's blind. And he's got to make stuff. And I'm like, and he's got that radar. I was like, I thought this was going to be the greatest thing ever if they would just do that. It's going to change the industry. Everybody's going to be like, it was so obvious. It's perfect,
I just want the Thing to be home once in one of those hero fights alone stories.
What's funny is that there's a tight little scene in the Spirit movie where he's just walking down the street and a guy steals a purse and he just holds his hand out and the guy walks into it, runs into it, knocks himself out. That's how I'm thinking your Thing story.
Through the Spirit movie?
Huh?
Did you make it all the way through the Spirit movie?
I have one time in the theater. I fell asleep for like 20 minutes, and then it's usually right after that scene I finally start falling asleep. I make it right there.
Watching it once.
Yeah,
I tried watching it once. I made it 10 or 15 minutes through, and I went, I have to turn this off. I can't watch anymore.
I use it to go to sleep. That minimalist approach that Frank Miller did is perfect to knock you out. I make it up to that scene where the guy runs into his fist. It's not long after that I'm gone.
Yeah,
and it's like you run into the fist.
Somewhere in the world, there's a scientist that has some sort of sensor that will detect magnetic fields, and they'll see an anomaly from where Will Eisner's still spinning around in his grave after that movie.
Put up Sleeping Reader's comment.
No, that continuity doesn't exist anymore either. Now it's about slabbed key issues.
Oh God!
Everything's a key issue.
It's a different audience.
There should be a villain now that's called the Slab.
Yeah, the Slab in the key.
Here's what's cool about our audience. I don't even like calling them an audience but it's the only term I can do to where everybody knows what we're talking about. They've read their comics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like, if you don't know something, you make a mistake, they jump right in there like we're talking, just hanging out like, no, man, this is what happened, or this is where you find it. Like that book they brought up at the beginning of this, Hedra or whatever.
Right.
Nobody sat there and called us stupid or acted like we were all whatever. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's like, check it out.
I understand why Damien is saying this. I mean, the other guys are all about. So this is the first appearance of Spider-Gwen, and it's a 9.4, and it's CGC grade. I don't care.
Congratulations! Can you read it now?
Yeah, and then Damien's doing videos, and he's showing his gigantic Steranko book that's like 1 meter tall, and it has all of the Steranko pages in the fold out. Yeah.
I've not got to watch a Steranko video yet.
Do these videos? I mean, I know they're out there, but I mean, I remember when they were crawling up and things were changing and all that stuff. But do these other YouTube channels get a lot of views? I mean, is there an audience for that?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. More people collect. I think more people collect comics and don't read them than collect them and read them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's trading cards.
There are people saying that they wouldn't. Yes, they do read the comics, but that they wouldn't buy them if they didn't know that they were going to be worth money a few years down the line.
Yeah, that's just the whole deal. I've had this talk with other people, but I think it was Charlton 66 maybe, but it's not so much shouldn't be it's like trading cards. They've got their baseball card, they got this, and that's what it's like. It's a cover collecting, and that's when I dipped out. That's when I dipped out of a lot of channels.
I think a lot of comic book collecting now is like trading card collecting, and I don't begrudge them it. I'm glad they're buying comics.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm not begrudging it, but I'm just saying. But
I can't.
Kind of wild. That's where it went.
Too much.
I'm just sort of like, how did that happen? How did it go this way? I don't like the mystery of missing how this happened. You know what I mean? I want to know how it happened.
I think it has a lot to do with movies and TV. I think there's a lot of movies and TV. There's a lot of comic channels that talk about nothing but movies and TV. Almost hardly ever mention comics.
Okay.
Yep. There are channels that advertise themselves as comic book channels, and it's so we're talking about the new Avengers movie. What do you think the new Avengers movie is going to be? Are
you talking about Comic Tom?
No,
I'll name the name. If it's Comic Tom, I tell you what, I found that channel a year and a half ago, and I'm like, I don't know what the deal is, but it took me about 2 days to get the stench of bullshit off me. I'm like, I'm on to you, Tom. I'm on to you.
It's those guys like Comic Drake and Orem Comics.
I've never even heard of them.
Yeah, but
I don't know them.
Some of these guys are the guys that hang around the Comic Storian and Comics Explain. Those two guys are complete idiots.
Storytellers.
Yeah,
they get up. They just I get what you're saying. I'm not here to like bash those channels, but now I know where we're at. I get what
when they get together, they only start talking about the movies.
Right. Well, I just those are the channels I stay away from.
One of the things that still bugs me to this day is people don't realize that the difference between superheroes and comics.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that they're not into. It's like everybody here loves the art form of comics.
Sure,
we love to read comics.
That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line. What I'm saying. Yeah. We love the place in our heads that the comic brings us to.
Yeah.
But sometimes now when you tell people, there's more to comics than just superheroes beat the crap out of each other, they look at you and you can just see their eyes glaze over. Like, what are you talking about?
They don't necessarily love the art form of comics. Some of them love the art form of superhero comics. They love that excitement that reading a superhero comics gives them, but they can't read a slice of life horror comic. Red Mother would leave them cold. They don't even know how to deal with it because no one's punching each other.
I kind of think
that's a different taste thing.
I think when you actually love the art form, like what you put it, you may even help me find some words. It's not so much, trying to put down what's going on in comics today. It's that you don't like seeing people do it badly when
right.
You got so much to pull from. To do it well and keep going forward. And it's kind of lost a lot of its integrity that it built up. I watched comics get that integrity as I grew up.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with the business behind comics, though. That has a lot to do with Ike Perlmutter wanting to make comics as cheaply as possible. So scouring the world for people who can draw comics cheaply, and they're not untalented.
No. I got some G.I. Joe stuff I can pull up. There's no talent there.
Some of them are talented, but that's not Marvel. Once you get to some of the lower tier stuff, it gets even less. But they're not. It's tough to create comics in a vacuum. So that when the whole comic industry was in New York, especially in the 70s when all the guys knew each other and shared studios and shared living quarters, that really created a creative dynamo. Walt Simonson, Frank Miller, Howard Chaykin, and so we're all upstart studios. We're all sharing a studio. Barry Windsor Smith, Mike Kaluta. Who else was in that studio book?
Bernie
2 other guys.
And Jeff Jones.
I about fell down when I found out Gil Kane and Eisner were in a studio together. That blew my mind.
Yeah. There's a big difference between that and a guy working in Croatia, a guy working in Italy, a guy working in Japan. They're all kind of you don't have. It's not the same. It doesn't create the same kind of creative powerhouse. Even all those West Coast guys, the Image guys, all working together, coming up with 1,000 different things.
Put like Frank Miller's writing is what got me liking him, but it was his artwork that I didn't get that people were crazy about until he did interviews where he talked about Neil Adams said he needed discipline, where Eisner showed him this, where he did that when he started telling when he started telling about how he was taught or learning from people, all of a sudden it was like a whole new way of looking at his art, and I could see it all of a sudden. Does that make sense? Like, oh, I see this, and there's that brush stroke, and there's that, and it was
a lot of times art is esoteric, which means you need knowledge before you can see things, and that's what you got was the knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, going back think to what we were talking about earlier.
In the 70s, everybody stopped by Continuity Studios and Neil Adams to learn stuff. All right, go Scott.
I was just going to get into what we were talking about earlier. I was talking about reading interviews, like in Comics Journal and things, extended interviews with artists. I always love reading about influences on artists and where they got their, their thing from. And it would just snowball because you'd hear, well, if you like, such and such, check out X and Y, and then everything just snowballs from there.
I mean, we could talk, Scott and I, Strouth, William Strouth and all that stuff. Stouth and things that came out of Bakshi and all that stuff. Then you find out Plug's in there, and a lot of comic book artists plug into that stuff.
Right.
That's what I loved about it, and I think Scott and I have talked about it. I'm still proud of that picture we have of us with Stouth. I really am.
It's something I was going to say a little bit earlier. You were talking about Transformers. There is a Transformer cover done by an artist that you and I both know that you would never expect to do Transformers, and that was Charles Vess.
That's awesome.
And when you tell somebody else, it's like, what? It's like, yeah.
See, and now I feel like the Transformer would have to be named something like Willow.
And did you know that
stamp collecting is sort of like card? That we think the guys who collect, covers, it is sort of like stamp collecting because these alternate these alternate 1 in 25 comics are not for reading. Because why would you read your $20 1 in 25 comic when you can get the $4 version of it?
Right.
So that it is like stamp collecting like that. Easy E, he read everything I buy except I'm like 50 issues behind on Spawn. Well, if you can make it through, if you can read Spawn, you're in better shape than I am because I find that book unreadable.
I can't do it.
Woo.
Okay, the guy, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be on now. Anderson that I was talking about, Brian Paluto. What is going on here? He just now he sent me a message saying
came back from a search.
Hold on. He goes. He just sent me a message, about 5 minutes ago. Said, "Who would have ever thought that Brian Paluto become who would become the crowdfunding king?" Laugh out loud. This Lady Death thing with Brian Paluto making money is getting some attention.
Yeah. Well, like I said, 10,000 fans can get you a lot of money. It's in that crowdfunding world. You have to know how to do everything yourself, and you'll probably have to hire a couple of people, but it can get you money.
All right. I got to take a call, man. I'll be right back.
You guys want to switch gears and look at some jungle comics?
Oh, man.
I think me and Paulo might have the same outlook on this.
We are hit by the juju.
This is the comic we decided to read. I just randomly picked an old comic.
Right.
That I have here, and it's interesting. I found this. It was on some site too. I didn't get it to, but did you guys know any of the artists who did this stuff?
No, not a single one.
Like it says here, the cover is Doolin-esque, but unlikely to be by him. I don't even know who Doolin is. By the way, this is Jungle Comics #97 from January 1948.
Right.
And I just find it amazing that this comic had 97 issues so far. 1948. Think about that.
I hope the other 96 were better than that one.
Well, you think by the 97th issue,
right?
Well, of course, this being the golden age, the first 30 comics may have been something that wasn't Jungle Comics, for all we know. Because it's like I don't know much about jump, but it's like I don't know. I don't even know who Doolin is. That it could be Doolin-esque. It's like there's this whole golden age world of. And this is by Avon Publishing. Who is this? Yeah. No. Who is this by? Let me go up here. Fiction House.
Okay.
You know, I don't know anything about Fiction, and some of it's even signed, but some of it isn't.
Right.
Script by Frank. Pencils by Joe Salardo. And I also noticed, and this is interesting, that all these guys penciled and inked their own stuff.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to share money.
Yeah, August Frohl. But I wouldn't have thought in 47 people were penciling and inking their. I thought everything. I would have thought everything was done assembly line by then, but I guess not. Yeah. Pencils and inks, Charles Sultan. Pencils and inks, Frank Doyle. I was like, I don't know any of these names. Mike Pepe, I think I've heard of. Pencils and inks.
Yeah, Mike Pepe and Maurice Whitman. I've seen those names around older Atlas Comics credits. Okay. I've been taking down all of those to build up my own database because so I've seen those names in Marvel Comics. Although they're not very. Actually, it's not Whitman. I may be confusing with Maurice Gutworth.
Okay, there's Maurice Whitman, Pencils and Inks, and Bob Lubbers. I think I may have heard his name too.
Yeah, Bob Lubbers. I've heard. I think he worked more for DC.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But the writers' names that we have in this comic are made up, so we have no idea.
Yeah, credit script it says as Frank Rydell. I guess I don't know what that means. As Ed Hunt, I guess it means that as
probably
Pierre
names.
It might be that it's like the American Comics Group, where the editor wrote everything, but he signed them everything under different names.
Yeah, there were a lot of science fiction magazines back in the 50s where you had one guy that was writing like 80% of the stories, and yeah.
But here we go with the first. I have to say, the art in this book surprised me. The art was really well drawn, and it was well inked, and the layouts were good generally.
I think it's generally confusing
about what you expect, but the scripts were terrible. Holy cow, were the scripts terrible! I mean, this first one. I like this first story. I found almost unreadable.
Even on the second page, there are 3 consecutive panels where the sky is a different color.
See, that doesn't bother me nearly as much as it bothers you.
Yeah.
Because I can understand the colorist was just trying to make it interesting.
I think he was just running out of one color and then had to switch over to another one.
I wonder if these were colored at the separator. And this could be before there was an actual colorist on comics. And the separator just plopped down whatever colors the separator wanted.
That would make a lot of sense now that you mentioned it.
Yeah, but having different colors for the sky is not out of the ordinary.
Yeah, because you just want a different background. See, that doesn't bother me nearly as much. You just need the sky being the same blue each panel might become monotonous. So they want to change the mood, so they make it a red sky. But like this, I think in this first story, everybody was speaking Tarzan Ooga Booga spiel. Me like 'em, that Tarzan speak where everybody's like.
English what I like is that they're probably speaking their own Ooga Booga language, but when it translates, everybody is making that language overly complicated in a way that nobody actually speaks.
And there's weird similes in it, and it's just like this first story I found the toughest to read of them all. Because they were really trying to get poetic with this Ooga Booga language they were using. And it's like, and the amount of big cats that attacked people in all these stories.
Yeah, that's a very easy jungle.
And the number of times the word shaft was mentioned. Yeah. It's talking about shaft.
No, and another one. The natives apparently don't have names for their own animals. Because it's the coiled one and the fanged one and the horned one.
Hey guys, I'm gonna peace out here. I walked outside, did my phone call, and me not eating today finally hit. So, I was like, whoa. So I'll catch y'all later, man.
Okay, we'll catch you later then.
But,
and like this first story I found had to have the worst script. But the art was pretty nice. And what was there a Tarzan movie in like the 20s or 30s where they rode, well, they weren't zebras, they were painted horses, where they rode zebras?
Can't remember.
I don't remember.
I think there
was to ride elephants.
And I think there was in some old Tarzan movie, because in 2 stories here they have them riding zebras for no particular reason that I can think of.
Right.
Except to get another exotic animal in there.
And I don't think that zebras are very much into carrying people.
Yeah, you can't actually ride a zebra. That's why in that Tarzan movie, I think they painted a horse.
Yeah, because because horses are big. They can't handle your weight, and donkeys can handle your weight mostly because they're kind of stout.
Right.
But zebras are lean.
Right. And they're small. Yes, you can't. But in here, they rode a zebra for no reason. A wild boar shows up just to threat. There's lots of animal attacks going on.
Also, horses usually domesticated and zebras aren't.
I like these giant teeth the guy got crushed by. Where's there's the giant idol, and they put the first guy in the mouth, and then closed the eye. I don't know if we then closed the idols. There they go. They staked them out.
All right.
They staked them out down here.
That reminds me of the old Tarzan movies. Because when they captured the hunting party, first they killed the load bearers, and then Tarzan would swoop in and save all the white people.
Yeah, they would work their way up, and I like the giant teeth threatening her there too. That was pretty cool. And there was that weird thing with the idol too that she found that I don't know had anything to do with anything except her being Jane, kind of, and finding an idol.
Unless it's an ongoing thing for the next few stories.
Yeah, who knows? Though I have to say there was less overt racism in this story than I would have suspected. Yeah, I mean, it's not like there was
like an idiot.
Just less overt talent in the story.
It's not like any of the characters were well defined, and all the natives were just random natives for the most part. But all the white people were just kind of random Tarzan types too.
Yeah.
I think that's
Kayanga himself is kind of, I am the jungle lord. How are you the jungle lord? I beat up people. And the Jane Standard is acting like a complete idiot.
Yeah. This may have been the best written one. Simba,
I actually like that one the best.
I really don't like those stories with animals acting like humans.
They're not my favorite stories either, but this one seemed to be the easiest to read. And, the animals were all kind of getting along and cooperating and acting like humans. Right. And for once, a big cat wasn't attacking someone and getting killed. So, like I said, this one seemed to be, like I said, you don't like this genre of story. Neither do I, really. But it seemed to be the easiest one to read, Simba. Captain Terry Thunder.
That one for me especially was hard to slog through. I just
And these paragraphs at the beginning that set things up were the worst kind of weird poetry.
Yes.
I mean, it was just like they're just crazy to try and read those.
Right.
Well, the art is nice. And also, I was very surprised by the layouts. There's a lot of
non-standard,
yeah, a lot of sort of Gene Colan-esque stuff that Gene Colan had a fight to do in the '60s. They were doing tons of here in '48. Like, this is not a standard grid layout,
right?
And he's got diagonals going on. And all of the layouts were like this, and every story had imaginative layouts with imaginative paneling. It was just the script that was so. Same story, something going on, Oh, this is the other story with the zebra. Our second story with the zebra.
Yeah, that's why I think it's the same person writing all the stories, because there are elements in there that it's the zebras, and they have a shout that they all they shout in all the stories.
Yeah, you could have retitled the main character in this story, Captain whatever his name was, Terry something Thunderlance or whatever his
Captain Terry Thunder by Pierre Lefleur.
I mean, you could have basically reskinned him as the Jungle Lord in the first story.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of the art in this one too has a lot of good variation in the natives. Unlike some of them, which they're all kind of drawn, but a lot of good variation there in the drawing.
No, that shout, that cry that they all seem to have in all the stories. Maybe it's also an attempt to make sure that they're all set in the same universe, which means that's a very busy jungle and it's full of jungle lords.
That's why the sky's red in half the panels then.
Yeah, all the jungle lords go there.
Are you saying that's their equivalent of the Wilhelm scream?
Here's another big cat attacking someone. I think a big cat attacked someone in like 4 out of 5 stories.
Yeah, and what's worse, according to this writer, leopards are evil.
Yes, definitely.
The leopard was evil in the story with the lion, and it's evil here.
There was one panel I noticed in this story. I don't remember which one it is, but it really looked like it's the middle one on that one over on the left where he's sitting there. You know, he's got his hands. It just looking at that looked like it was almost like a Hal Foster swipe.
Could have been.
Okay.
Could have been. Yeah, I don't know Hal Foster that well to know. Well, is it most of the stuff? Like, look at the page layout there.
Yeah, a lot of diagonals.
Yeah, that's a lot different than you'd think.
If they could have just got quality writing to go along with the creativity of the layout.
Like the writing in the one we read last week, same type of 8-page, was very readable.
Right.
There's that leopard again threatening him. I didn't bother to read the text piece. I don't know about you guys.
That was the most interesting thing in the whole book for me.
Man of Adventure, Richard Burton.
Just talking about Richard Burton's adventures, and he had a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a bit of text here, isn't there? Page 5.
I thought that was the best part of the whole book. Was
because usually these are 2-page fillers, but here it's like a complete feature on its own.
Yeah, this is what, 52 pages or something, I think it was?
Something like that.
Yeah, Sir Richard Burton biography. I didn't even realize that was a Sir Richard Burton biography. Here's Taboo here.
Oh, that was the worst story for me.
Yeah, probably because it was there's another big leopard attacking.
Sure.
And the guy's supposedly a wizard, but he doesn't do anything wizardly.
No. I was rooting for the leopards by the end of this book. I was like, come on, I want the leopard to win one.
I understand. It's like every time I watch a horror movie and somebody goes in the basement, that's when I start rooting for the monster.
Once again, nice. I love this figure, this falling figure down the bottom left. That's pretty nicely done.
And those bats are ridiculous. Because bats who are that size, they're fruit bats. They're not vampires.
Right.
And anyone who's actually read any book on animals knows that.
The
artist on this one had a slightly different style than on most of the other ones too.
Mm-hmm. Once again, we're lots of those diagonal layouts. Yeah. Wow, look at the coloring on that top right panel. They were really trying something different with that horror coloring on their faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the Maurice Whitman story with
Camilla. Is that? This time we get a Black Panther who's evil. Then we get tired of the leopard. Here comes the evil Black Panther. And this one was, the women in this book weren't helpless victims.
No, and this one is particularly violent. Camilla seems more bloodthirsty than any of the guys in the other stories.
Right?
That's true.
And this one has got 2 women in it there's another zebra, but at least no one's riding it. Look at the women in this. This isn't typical Tarzan saving Jane stuff. Most of the time, Jane's out there kicking ass with them.
Right. We need to, Jared. We need to get you a jungle story where there's a zebra that's being ridden by a leopard.
There she is riding a log in her zebra patterned bathing suit.
Right.
Well, look at that page layout.
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, it's got the big panel in the middle that's all pointy. We got her going over on the falls on a lot. Like the page layouts in this really surprised me. I did not know they were doing page layouts like this in 48. And look, breaking all sorts of panel borders here. It's got her hands going right in the middle of those panel borders in the middle. Her hair's breaking the panel border in the panel 5.
Yeah, compared to the other stories, this one's particularly dynamic. There's a lot of movement going on. This is the one by Bob Lubbers.
Let me stop sharing so we can get back to our.
Yeah. I actually liked Camilla. I think she deserved the book. It's a shame she's in the back pages.
Yeah, like that one was one of the easiest ones, or most of that. I found the very first story to be the hardest to read.
Yeah. I don't. Apparently, Kanga is one of the most popular in Fiction House, and I don't understand why. Because if all the stories were like this one,
they were the stories are very repetitive.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. But I wonder if they were repetitive because they'd been doing jungle stories for so long. That's just what people expected.
I don't know.
Yeah, you had all the
Buana issue.
Yeah, and you all everybody saying Buana and Juju and there's one story. And there's one story when they have some kind of African language translation, and it translates into Juju.
Right.
Why?
Have you guys read any Fletcher Hanks? I just spoonerized that.
No, but I've seen some of the art. Was it? No, where did I see it? Yeah, well, I think that cartoonist Kayfabe did it once, but it wasn't
right.
Was it one of them recent?
They may have been. Yeah, I think so. I actually have a couple of Fletcher Hanks books that I read recently. And the one thing I have to say about it, what separates Fletcher Hanks from a lot of other stuff is crazy out there Golden Age stuff, but it's actually good.
Yeah.
I mean, what sets it apart? I mean, it's nuts, but it's good nuts, as opposed to stuff. It's so bad it's good. It's actually good, but nuts. So that's what's the difference between Fletcher Hanks and a lot of
right.
stuff.
I mean, it's not Fletcher Hanks, but the guy's obviously channeling a little bit in terms of dynamic poses and in movement.
Yeah. Fletcher Hanks's stories. I have to close my blinds. Fletcher Hanks's stories were very creative. Very creative. Just nuts. Wonder how they deal with the Fatima running around.
Fatima probably scares all the zebras. That's why she has the power of flight.
Yeah. So I wonder if this is one of those books that because in the Golden Age, because I haven't looked up the history of it, and the Golden Age sometimes they used to just take over another book's numbering. Right. So did they really sell 100 issues, or did Jungle Comics become popular right about here? So they took some other comic and made it into a Jungle comic. I'm not sure of that.
Let me see. No. Jungle Comics was always the same title.
It was always the same title?
Yeah.
Wow.
163 issues between 1940 and 1954.
Wow. That is a lot of Jungle Comics.
Yeah, I don't think there was any other Jungle comic that sold only Tarzan. And Tarzan kept the same numbering, but skipped around a lot of publishers.
Wow, that is
fighting people.
Yeah, I see a whole lot of modern stuff with less visual interest. That's true. That comic had a lot of visual, despite the scripts not being good. It had a lot of visual interest. I agree with you. Yeah, like I said, the layouts were. I'd only seen layouts by like that starting in the '60s with Gene Colan. when he started doing a lot of the diagonal layout stuff. Yeah, Jack Cole was good nuts. His Plastic Man was excellent. Yeah, Jungle Comics ran straight through. We just found out. Well, man,
that one ran straight through me.
So by issue 97, they had this formula down.
Yeah.
I mean, they were obviously doing more experimental stuff with the art, but the stories were giving people what they want.
Very formulaic, yeah.
Yeah. There was nothing much to the. Like, the plots weren't even bad. If you were just look at the art and not read it, the plots were okay. You could follow it all with that, but as soon as you got into that script, some of them were just like, woo,
yeah,
crazy nutty.
Oh, and Jumbo Comics, where Sheena appeared, 167 issues.
Wow.
So they had two Jungle anthologies, and both of them lasted for more than 15 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. I mean, think of what it takes for a comic to get to 97 these days. And that Jungle comic was at issue 97.
Right.
1948. Who was that? That last story was Bob Lubbers. We're gonna have to look for some more stuff by him these days. Wizard of the Whirling Doom. But I read that one. It's like I read that one over like 2 days. I took my own advice and only read like one 8-page story and put it down. Then a few hours later, read another 8-page story because Scott complained about it right away.
I read the whole thing just right through. Like,
that was your mistake.
Yeah, that's true.
It was much better reading a story here than a story a couple hours later than a story the next day. I could actually make it through that. But speaking of Spawn before, that's what reading a Spawn script is like to me. Have you guys read any of the latest Spawn stuff?
I just have never liked anything that Todd McFarlane has ever done. I don't know why. It doesn't appeal to me. Either one.
Okay. He's not my favorite, but occasionally it's like I can remember.
He's not my least favorite, but yeah, it
was like, it must be 5, 6, 7 years ago now, before the Eric Larson's Todd McFarlane stuff, which I read on Spawn, where I said to myself, man, I haven't checked out a Spawn issue in 10 years. Right. Let me just check out a Spawn issue. So I picked one up, and I didn't realize it wasn't Todd. I didn't realize it was Todd McFarlane writing, because at this time he was writing under a pen name for some reason. So it had some pen name writing and some other guy drawing it who was not McFarlane. And I couldn't even make it through the issue. I was just like, "Ooh, no wonder I haven't checked this out in 10 years. Let me just put this down."
There's a few creators, and he's just one of them that just, for whatever reason, they don't do anything for me.
Yeah, but sometimes, like with a guy as famous as that, I'll check out his work every now and then just to see.
Sometimes just by osmosis, you can't help it. You know?
Yeah, just like I got to be able to see something now.
Right.
Let's see, those publishers probably had no faith they'd get repeat readers because there was no guarantee a newsstand would even stock it. Yeah. So you just gave them the same Jungle comic, yeah. Yeah, it was a different world back then. Matter of fact, in comics history, I remember the rise of one of the reasons Playboy became so successful was because that was about the time of one of the comics crashes, and the distributors needed something to distribute.
Gotcha.
So it was like, throw this one in there because we're running out of comics to distribute. I always thought that was interesting. Just timing.
Yeah, being in the right place at the right time never hurts.
It does not hurt. Let me see if there's any new indie stuff coming in. Punchline is getting her own comic. I know you're all lining up for that.
I don't even. Oh, is that a DC character?
Yeah, that was the hot character from this summer. She's the Joker's new girlfriend.
Yeah, that's about all I know.
Yeah, me too. But and any Sweet Tooth fans out there? Whoops. Because this is Jeff Lemire, I think. And DC Black Label is going to be printing a new Sweet Tooth stuff thing. That's one of his most famous. I think there was a whole bunch of issues of Sweet Tooth. It ran like 40 issues or something. I think that's where he made his name originally. Let's go back to our 3 setup. Where's that? I like our 3 shot. Well, let's see what else do we. Any 100 Bullets fans out there?
I've never read it. I've always heard good things about it, but I've never read any of it.
I read a little of it. I'm not a fan of Brian Azzarello's writing style.
Me either.
But it's not terrible.
I've vastly prefer his wife's work.
Who's his wife?
Jill Thompson.
Oh, okay. Anybody? There's going to be a Sandman Lock and Key crossover. How nutty is that? Why? I'm a Lock and Key fan, but not a Sandman fan.
I'm the exact opposite. I'm a big Sandman fan. I was like, I don't know about this crossover thing. Don't know.
Scott is like Mikey from those Life cereal commercials. We can't get him to like anything.
I like lots of stuff, just not crossover.
Mashups. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of mashups. I have never read many Star Trek comics. Well, there's Star Trek Year 5.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
It's like anything else. Some of them are good, and a lot of them aren't.
The series isn't that bad. It's actually it has some interesting stories in there.
Yeah. Is it a continuation of the original series?
Yeah, it's also a continuation of the cartoon because Eric's is there. Eric's and Mares.
It's like one of my problems with the Star Trek comics is some of the artists would draw them like with superhero musculature, and it just looked silly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you hire a superhero guy to do it, this is one that November by Matt Fraction and somebody. I remember taking volume 1 out of the library, and it didn't really grab me. But here we've got volume, or is this a hardcover? This is a collected edition. Volume 4, this is. November volume by Matt Fraction and Elsa Charretier. All right. This one I've been reading, 20XX, which is by one of the Luna brothers, and I guess he had a different woman writing with him on the. I think they're whoever he's dating now. That's what it is in my mind. He had like a different female writer for the last series, and now this series he's got another female writer. I'm like, is he just dating women to write comics with? I don't know. She could have no romantic involvement with him whatsoever. In my mind, somehow that's what's going on. But this is almost like the original X-Men, except even more talky. Believe that, more talky than 1960s Stan Lee. I like it, but it's not one of my favorites.
Gotcha. We'll have to do Jungle 20XX.
Matter of fact, there was one time, I think it was issue 2 or 3. I'm in the habit of reading my comics twice. I read them sort of when I get them home from the comic shop in that first few days. And then I put them back in my to-be-read pile. And sometime within the next week or 2 weeks, I read them a second time before I file them away. The second time I read, I don't know, issue 20XX number 3 or something, I decided to read Every Other Balloon. And I got to tell you, I think it improved it.
Really?
I think I liked it better
It's
reading
like
every
speed reading.
balloon. Yeah. I just skipped half of the balloons. I'm like, yeah, it still works for me.
I can just see you just kind of, with a French accent. I shall come back and read you a second at a time.
But I actually started doing that because what I would do was, I found I wasn't getting as much enjoyment out of my comics as I once did, because I'd read an issue and then file it away and not think about it. Read an issue and file it away. And I remembered back to my youth how I used to, when you're young, your comics would be out you'd get a new comic and it would just be out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you'd pick it up 2 days later and read it again.
Yeah.
And you'd pick it up 3 days later and you'd shuffle through your new comics.
Right.
So I just decided, I started doing that. I've got like one section over on I'll just put a bunch of comics. I'll just leave them out there and go through them every now and then before I file that. And reading them twice also means I remember them more.
Sure.
Yeah. Rizzo's art is the highlight. It really is. I mean, he's a top flight artist. He does good stuff on 100 Men. You really narrow your potential audience down doing comics about other media properties. Who reads Buffy comics that's not already a Buffy fan? Not many, I assume. That is true. And also, I'm a Buffy fan and a comics fan. And I read some Buffy comics and then just stopped because...
Yeah, but there's a reason why licensed comics made sense once. They don't anymore because you're a Flintstones fan. You're a kid, you're a Flintstones fan, and Flintstones is on once a week, and there are no reruns, and there's no TV channel, there's no 24-hour TV channel showing cartoons. So while you're waiting for a new episode of the Flintstones, what do? You go and buy a comic with the Flintstones, and you go back and you read the comic. And while you're waiting for the new episode, that's okay. But now you can watch you can binge every episode of Buffy at any time you want. There's really no reason, unless you think, I wish there were more Buffy stories than the ones that were made for TV.
Right.
I think people are happy with what they have on TV. It's the complete story.
I think that I heard someone once describe it as, just like you said, it's like you want more of the thing, that you want more Buffy TV show. But you can't get more Buffy TV show, so you read the comic. But the comic is never as good as the thing you want more of. You know, whatever you want, even if you like the comic and they make a TV show out of it, the TV show is never going to be as good as the thing you want more of is always better than the more in another medium. So it's kind of like, But then there's like when you're a company like IDW or Dynamite, you're selling nostalgia.
Right.
I mean,
nostalgia is not what it used to be.
Right, but if you can get the license to something that's old and there is no more of, like, you know, you get the Avengers, Emma Peel and John Steed license.
Yeah,
that one of them had.
Yeah, there were some of those.
I mean, you might have a better chance selling 10,000 copies of that than your original project, which is why I think they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never going to buy it.
Right.
But somebody might. And that's who buys it. Hardcore fans.
A single 20-hour could feel.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Like when I was reading that Jungle comic.
Oh, see, that's why you shouldn't have read it straight. Now you've learned your lesson. Don't read it straight through. See, you couldn't even appreciate the dynamic art of that last story because you were just burnt out by the time you got to it.
Oh yeah.
You didn't even, you probably couldn't even see it.
Mm-hmm.
But that though it does really make the art from last week's the writing from last week's comic stand out even more.
Right.
It makes me appreciate. And who did you say that? Gibson?
Yeah, Walter Gibson.
Walter Gibson, it really makes that stand out, even because it stood out to me to begin with. But now that I've read this one,
well, with the amount of pulps that were sold back in the 30s and 40s, and probably continuing up through the 50s, Walter Gibson is actually one of the best-selling authors of the 20th century.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they were selling millions of copies a month, every month, for years. Doc Savage, same thing.
That's like, I can't remember. Mark Evanier has written about him on his blog. There's a comic book writer. I don't even know his name.
Paul Newman?
It was different than that. There was another one. I remember Paul Newman's name.
Paul Newman was very prolific. He was very prolific in comics.
Wrote for Dell or Gold Key, and he wrote for 25 years.
Yeah.
And he may have written the most comic pages. He's like in the top 10 of the most comic books.
I might be wrong, but I think it was Paul Newman. But
it could have been Paul Newman, but I think there's a second name that goes along with him.
Let me see.
I don't remember, but I know that Mark Evanier has written him. Like Mark Evanier has written about some. I think it's the Bill Finger Award they give out.
Gotcha.
To an unsung comic book writer. Joe Gill.
I think Joe Gill, yeah.
Joe Gill might be another one. I don't even think that. I think that's another name I'm thinking of. He might be another, but there's a third name I never even heard of.
Well, it says here until recently that Paul S. Newman was credited in the Guinness Book of World Records of the most prolific comic book writer with more than 4,100 published stories. But evidently, Chuck Dixon has beat that, which surprises me.
How do you guys feel about some of Dynamite's utilization of Golden Age characters, Project Superpowers, Miss Fury, etc.? I have not read any of those, but I've heard they're pretty good. There was one particular one I read. Did you read any of them?
Yeah, the thing about superpowers is that they try to get you to like that universe of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And after one measly arc where they don't fulfill the promise of an interesting story, they try to branch off into multiple titles with a bunch of characters who have not sold for 30 to 40 years.
Right.
And then they expect to be successful. With long form storytelling in 6-issue story arcs.
Are those the ones that sometimes they don't even end the story arc?
Might be.
Because I have my friend Rob, who I mentioned before, who I usually meet at the comic shop, but haven't since COVID. He would, I think it may be Dynamite ones that he refuses to buy now, because he bought a few of them and he liked them, but it was like supposed to be a 6-issue mini, and they just published 3 issues of it and stopped. Yeah. I guess because it wasn't selling.
Found out some things I really don't want to talk about here about Dynamite CEO that really makes me not want to give him any money anymore.
Didn't he just get fired? One of them went.
I don't know.
I can't. There was some turnover at the top, I think.
It seems like a few years ago, Moonstone had the license for a lot of classic pulp figures like Phantom and Zorro and whatnot. It seems like Dynamite just bought them all out. Every single one of them. It's like one after the other. It used to be Moonstone. Now we don't have anything left. Dynamite bought everything.
I wonder if the days extend and get boring again for really old people. That reminds me of the song by the Highwaymen, like Desperados Waiting for a Train. That was their description of old age.
Well, kind of like being on a submarine.
Joe Gill has written
days
from Charlton up there with Paul S. Newman. Yeah, Mark Evanier has a pretty good YouTube channel.
Mark Evanier, he's a very sharp character. He knows a lot about a lot of different subjects.
He started interviewing a lot of people he's worked with in the animation and voiceover community. I haven't watched any of them, but I read his blog. So, matter of fact, I can remember in Crossfire. You remember Crossfire from the 80s?
Dan Spiegel,
yeah, Dan Spiegel and Mark Evanier.
Yeah.
Mark Evanier used to write a column in the back about his Hollywood days.
Right. Yeah, he knows just about everybody.
And I always loved them. Sometimes they were more interesting than the comic.
It's really interesting to watch Sergio Aragonés interview Mark, and kind of turn the table where he's interviewing Mark instead of Mark interviewing him.
I'll have to check. Like I said, I haven't sat through any of those interviews yet, but I'll have to. Moonstone still had Domino. He's got some Dynamite comic inside jokes here.
Well, these characters being in the public domain, anybody can theoretically use them. And Daredevil's been appearing in Savage Dragon.
Yeah, right. I was going to say Eric Larson has used some of the public domain characters just because he wanted.
I was going to say at least Dynamite had the good sense to get Mike Kaluta to do some of the covers for their Shadow books.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So you can collect those like trading cards.
Well, I'll buy anything that Mike Kaluta does. If he draws My Little Pony, I'll be there to see it.
That just reminded me. This week I passed out to the guys a Master of Kung Fu covers collection, which is just it's a digital collection. It's just a CBZ file with all the Master of Kung Fu covers in it. And because I've done that, I've digitally collected a bunch of some series that are just covers. And one of the things I collected were Red Sonja covers.
Okay, gotcha.
Do you have any idea how many Red Sonja covers there are? Holy cow.
There's hundreds. Yeah.
They put out multiple covers.
I
think in my folder, I had 500 Red Sonja covers. Over 500. Yeah. It's just nuts.
Yeah, living in the age of the variant covers. Interesting.
Ooh, that is crazy.
Yeah, that first Star Wars book that Marvel did is like, really, guys? Yeah.
And you notice that book's not even mentioned anymore. How crazy! I mean, that with all its covers, it sold 1 million copies, and it was hot for about 6 months. When's the last time you saw a Star Wars book on a YouTube video? Even among all those guys who collect for their covers.
Well, also the latest movie trilogy kind of dampened a lot of people's enthusiasm for Star Wars as well.
I think it did, but still, no one collects Star Wars anymore. It's just amazing how it went from that million-seller first issue. What year did that come out? Like 2017 or 18?
Something like that.
It wasn't that long ago.
Another thing I've never understood, I don't understand this phenomena also too, and this happened both with Conan and Star Wars, was when Dark Horse had it, nobody seemed to give a damn about it. And then all of a sudden, Marvel gets the rights and people go apeshit,
Yeah.
Why? I don't understand that.
Only briefly. Now no one gives about it. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why that is. I actually, years ago, I asked my friend, because I know a lot of comic fans, and I know a lot of Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
And no overlap. None of my comic fan friends, who were all Star Wars fans, bought any of the Dark Horse comics, ever. And they all, saw Star Wars when they were 10, bought the Marvel Star Wars comic. Mm-hmm. No Dark Horse Star Wars. And one day I asked a few of them, I was like, why do you never buy? And they're like, they all said the same thing. It's not Luke and Leia.
Yeah.
It's not the Star Wars characters they care about. So they ignored them all. And I think a lot of them came back with the Marvel because it was Luke and Leia. And Han Solo.
They missed out on some good stories.
Yeah, they may have, but that's why they didn't buy it.
Right.
I like the Daredevil that Dynamite did, and they really had a good thing going and made one of the wise guys the new Essential Daredevil. And yeah, I've actually heard some good things about those Dynamite Golden Age characters, but they, like Paolo said, they didn't sustain it. And how would you expect them to sustain it?
They did some Shadow Batman crossovers too.
Shadow Grendel by Matt Wagner was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys read that one. Any Grendel?
I thought about buying it. I have a Shadow Green Hornet.
I love Matt Wagner, but I've never read any of his Grendel work.
No, his Grendel.
I know that's an odd, yeah.
And I just reread his Grendel 1 through 18, the Christine Sparse. I enjoyed it more now than I did in the 80s when I bought it.
I remember really liking the second Mage series when it came out.
I bought the second Mage series and the third. I liked them all. I think I liked the third one better than the second one.
I started off with that one, but then I missed a couple issues. Never really got back on it again.
It's good. You can pick it up and trade. You can probably find the back issues for nothing if you can find them.
Right.
But Grendel, there was a while there that Matt Wagner wasn't drawing Grendel. He was giving it to other people to draw.
Right.
And I didn't like it so much. Then sometime in like the early 2000s, he got back to drawing Grendel, and he got back to telling Hunter Rose stories about Grendel.
Right.
And I really liked I've liked all his Grendel stuff since then. And his Grendel Batman and his Grendel Shadow was good too, because it threw Grendel back in the Shadow time in the 30s. So that was pretty good. Oh, look, Comic Crack showed up. Evening.
Good evening. Somebody, you posted what they said earlier. Somebody's talking about Sergio Aragonis. Yeah, he's one of the best guys in the world. He's
everyone
really fun to talk to.
Yeah. And Christine Spar is his Grendel. Wish they would bring her back. Which, she died at the end of the 12 issues. And I think that's one of the things. When that series first came out in the 80s, I was already a Grendel fan from Devil by the Deed. And that's all there was of Grendel. It first appeared in Kamiko. What is it? Kamiko Primer. I didn't read any of those, and those were impossible to find. Yeah. Then he kind of just rethought the whole idea of Grendel and started telling a Grendel story in the back of Mage, which became the Devil by the Deed graphic novel. So all I knew of Grendel was Devil by the Deed, a graphic novel, and then he put out like a 12-page Grendel story, Grendel Black, White, and Red, which was like in some Kamiko giveaway thing. It wasn't giveaway. It was like a Kamiko where you had to buy this collection of 12 Kamiko issues to get this one Grendel story, which I did.
A retailer variant kind of thing.
It wasn't. It was. Matter of fact, let me go over to the. Okay. I'll show it to you. I got to turn on my light. I can't even see over here.
Let there be light.
There we go. This was the Kamiko sampler. And it was this, this Grendel, what do you call it? Dust Jack. You keep comics in it. And it came with 8 to 12 comics, various Kamiko things.
Oh,
and it also came with, I don't know, this is the black book. I think it came with this. This was like another Kamiko sampler that had a little Grendel thing in it. Oh, I guess I must have it somewhere else on the shelf. But it came with a little like 8 or 10 page Grendel story that was never to be reprinted again. Of course, Dark Horse reprinted it eventually.
Sure.
And it was just a little Grendel story. That's interesting. And that's all there was of Grendel.
I don't ever remember seeing like a promotional slipcase that had other individual books, more than like 2 or 3, like the 80 issue. It's an interesting format. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, you can actually still find this on eBay for dirt cheap because no one knows it exists. No one cares it exists.
Right. I understand.
How many Grendel fans out there want this? But so then when they announced a Grendel ongoing series, it was big news. And also in the thing about Grendel, the Grendel Devil by the Deed graphic novel, he died at the end of it. So basically the first Grendel story, not counting the primer, which Matt Wagner didn't count, because he rethought Grendel after the primer. So Grendel died at the end of the graphic novel. So everybody was wondering how he was going to do Grendel. So then when the Kamiko series came out, they made Christine Spar Grendel. And they kind of treated they treated Grendel like a meme, a virus that infected society. And she was looking for her kidnapped son. And there was this vampire who kidnapped her, and she had the Grendel mask. And she was actually in Devil by the Deed as like Grendel's biographer's daughter or something like that. And so when that Grendel came out, I didn't like it as much because it wasn't Hunter Rose.
Uh-huh.
But I liked it. And then when she died at the end of issue 12, and you were like, what the heck's going on here? Now another Grendel is dead? Because you thought it was going to be a normal comic like Spider-Man, where you get Peter Parker every issue of Spider-Man. It didn't turn out to be. Grendel turned out to be something completely different.
Right.
And going back and reading that Christine Spar Grendel and knowing it was a graphic novel rather than a continuing series made the reading experience a lot different.
Sure.
I think he only understood what he actually wanted to do with Grendel after the Brian Lee Sung run, because Brian Lee Sung was obviously not a good idea to be Grendel. He was not. And then he starts telling the stories 200, 300 years in the future, and Grendel is more like a shadowy figure that starts taking up a place in the unconscious collective.
Right, he becomes a meme in society, a virus.
Yeah, and by the time we get to 24, which is when Grendel really starts, it's when on 24.
Yeah, I didn't really. I bought up to issue 40, but I don't remember any of them. I wasn't a big fan of the future Grendel stuff, but I'm very much enjoying Grendel Prime that's coming out now, which is it's a new Matt Wagner future Grendel story. That's good. I don't know if you've are familiar with that one. It's not even over. It's like a 6 or 8 issue miniseries that was running before COVID hit. Yeah, it got interrupted.
To me, those future Grendel stories are the best. Starting with 24, when we have all the vampires and the crazy guy who pretends to be Grendel living in the sewer, and the sun gun, and then Orion Asante becomes emperor, and the emperor becomes the Grendel. That to me is my favorite part, especially because there are no good guys there. Everybody is either insane or easily corruptible, even when they start with the best intentions.
I read those in the 80s and haven't read them and don't remember them now. That's why I'm only up to like issue 20 in my reread. Who drew those issues? Tim Sale drew some of them?
Tim Sale, yeah. Tim Sale drew all of them, maybe.
Oh, he drew all of them. Okay.
Yeah, from that stage, he was the. Maybe he didn't. No, he didn't draw all the vampire part, but he drew the Orion Asante arc.
Okay, that must have been why it stuck around issue 40 as the Tim Sale art.
Yeah,
the lead character man.
Because then it ends in 40. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it kept going. Yeah, I think it kept going after.
Yeah, the thing is that there's the problems with Kamiko going under, and Matt Wagner having to get the rights back, and instead of continuing from number 41 at Dark Horse, he makes the first Grendel Prime arc, War Child, a new miniseries. Yeah,
I have a trade of that.
Yeah, I need a trade of that.
I stopped buying Grendel then, just because Matt Wagner, I stopped buying, but then I bought a War Child trade years later and enjoyed it. So. Yeah, Matt Wagner made a self-portrait, so when his hairline kept going back, so did Mage's.
So all you'd have to do to win any cosplay contests or conventions is give Matt Wagner a baseball bat.
Was that
the Shazam T-shirt?
Yes.
That was Sale's first or very early work. I think I remember Sale first on a mini-series that came out by Kamiko called Amazon or The Amazon. That's where I first discovered Tim Sale and liked it. I don't remember what the story was about, but I remember the Tim Sale jungle. He was drawing this jungle like really lush, and I really enjoyed it.
Did a leopard bite somebody?
So when he popped up on Grendel, I stayed around for it. So look up the Amazon. I think it may have only been 2 issues from Kamiko. Kamiko.
I summon you.
Us. So we're rolling up on 9 o'clock, and I'm running out of energy.
I don't see an Amazon here.
You need to recharge your Green Lantern battery.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's the Amazon, I think. It might be.
Nope. Oh, wait, it's here, yeah. 3 issues.
3 issues.
1989. Yeah, Stephen T. Siegel and Tim Sale.
Yeah, that was a good little series, I remember.
There's a guy with a camera on the cover of the first issue.
I don't know if Bernie did any Grendel work. I don't know.
No, Bernie did that arc that Paolo just mentioned. The right after Christina. What was the guy's name?
Brian Lee Sung.
Brian Lee Sung was the name of the character who became Grendel, and Bernie Moreau drew those.
Right.
I think there was 3 issues. That's some of my favorite.
Yeah.
That's when I became a Bernie Moreau fan, and I followed him to the Jam.
Yeah, 13 to 15. 16 to 19 are the ones with the commissioner becoming an author.
Matt Ragnar drawing really small postage stamp size for an issue.
Yeah.
Really tall ones.
Yeah, and then everything starts shifting to 2023 is like the incubation years, and 24 is when Crazy Eddie, or what was his actual name, takes over because with the vampire storyline.
Yeah, the first 2 experimental ones weren't very good, like issue 19 and 20 or something. Those are the last ones I read.
Okay, so from these covers, I can't really tell what the Amazon is about.
It was about like a guy hanging out and taking a trip through the jungle, if I remember. It's been so long, I can't swear to it.
Was he riding a zebra?
But that may have been the first time I went, wow, I really like Tim Sale.
Well, this covers look impressive. I mean, for early work, was Bill Loeb's already around? Because I
believe Bill's been around a while.
Because this painted art kind of reminds me a bit of Bill Loeb's.
We just lost Jared.
Wrap around covers.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to be able to get Jared back either since he started the whole stream.
I think with this one I think the good thing about StreamYard is that we can keep going.
I guess a leopard must have got him. That must have been what happened.
We shall shaft him a zebra so he can return.
I've never seen the word shaft used so many times in just a few pages. I'm like, what is
No,
the
for people,
a little wonky there.
For people who came in late,
we thought you got attacked by a leopard.
No, it just threw me right out. I may as well have been a leopard. I was just about to say something, and all of a sudden I was like, "Poop, gone." Oh, all right.
Like a Spinal Tap drummer. Poof.
All right, well, we should sign off anyway because it's been 3 hours.
Same again. Yeah, we should. When we run your channel, we should start calling this giant-sized Cavern of Chaos.
A 3-hour tour.
All right, so we're gonna end the broadcast now.
Okay.
You guys all have a good week out there.
Yes.
And we'll catch you next week, I guess. Yeah, we'll keep going.
Come back and catch you another time.
Yeah.
But maybe next week we can finally go back to Tim's channel.
We'll see. We'll see if you can make it. So we can, like I said, I've been naming these like Marvel miniseries. So we're at 21.2 with this. Yeah. This has been 2 weeks on my channel after episode 21. All right, cheers, guys. We will catch you later.
Bye.